Hello everyone, welcome back to GraveTales. I know many of you enjoy listening to these videos as you fall asleep. I want you to leave a comment on where in the world you're tuning in from, and if you're enjoying the story, be sure to like and subscribe. Alright, now, let's get into tonight's stories. Story 1. I hadn't spoken to Ethan in 4 months when he texted me. We'd ended things in the kind of messy, drawn-out way that leaves you bruised in places you didn't know existed. You know the type of breakup, the kind when nothing explodes outright, but everything slowly corrodes until even breathing near each other feels like acid. 1 week we were sharing Spotify playlists and frozen pizzas. The next, we were whisper-yelling in my apartment parking lot, saying things we could never take back. He stormed off, I watched him go, and that was that. No grand finale, just silence until the night of February 8th. It was just after 2 a.m. I'd fallen asleep on the couch, half watching some old paranormal documentary on Netflix. The room was dark except for the cold glow of the TV. I remember the sound of a phone buzzing on the coffee table, not loud, but enough to drag me back from that hazy edge of sleep. I thought it was a spam text, or maybe one of those late-night "you up?" messages from someone I hadn't deleted yet. But when I picked up my phone and saw the name, my stomach tightened like a fist. Ethan Hage, just like that, lowercase, no punctuation, no context, nothing, like we'd spoken yesterday. I stared at the screen for a long time. My first thought wasn't relief or anger, it was confusion. I'd blocked his number after the breakup, not out of pettiness, but because I knew I had to. Ethan was the kind of guy who didn't let go easily. Even during our last conversations, I could see him trying to twist every word into some excuse. To stay? He'd stare at me with this hollow, wide-eyed calm, like if he just looked sad enough, I'd cave. So when I saw that message short, harmless, and completely wrong, something in me froze. I didn't respond right away. I wanted to. Part of me wanted to yell, to ask what he thought he was doing. But curiosity won out. Instead, I typed. Didn't expect to hear from youth. Appeared almost immediately, like he'd been waiting. Just wanted to talk, couldn't sleep, there was something off about it. Ethan had always been long-winded. The kind of guy who'd send you a novel about how a song reminded him of a dream he had when he was 12. This wasn't his tone. It was flat, dull, almost robotic. But I kept going. What do you want to talk about? No reply, not for 20 minutes. I stared at the typing indicator, watched it disappear, reappear, disappear again. Then finally, you remember the red tree. I blinked. The red tree. That memory slid into my brain like a knife. There was a red tree, or at least that's what we called it, back when we went camping for our 1-year anniversary, up near Lake Hartley, surrounded by old-growth forest and Roos hills. That place had been beautiful in a haunting way. No cell service, no other campers, just trees that went on forever, and a single trail we barely followed. At some point, we found this gnarled old maple tree with bark stained a dark reddish-brown, like dried blood. It stood alone on a small rise, roots curled like claws. Ethan had called it the heart tree and made some joke about carving our initials into it. I laughed at the time, but I remember not wanting to touch it. Something about it felt wrong. We hadn't spoken about that trip since. Not once. It was the same weekend things started going south. Why bring it up now? I didn't reply. I just stared at the message, heart pounding a little faster than it should have been. My room suddenly felt colder, like someone had cracked a window behind me. Then my phone buzzed again. You left me there, that S. When I stopped breathing for a second, it felt like I was reading something that wasn't meant for me, like finding a letter in a drawer that wasn't supposed to be opened. The phrasing wasn't angry, it wasn't even accusatory. It felt like a fact, a statement, cold, simple. But I hadn't left him there. Not really. We fought, yes. He stayed in the woods for a couple of hours after I walked back to the car, but he made it out fine. Drove home separately. He was back in his apartment the next day. We texted that week. Met up twice after that. It wasn't like I'd abandoned him in the middle of nowhere. So what was he talking about? I tried calling straight to voicemail. I waited another hour. No reply, no dots, no follow-up. Just that last message, sitting there like a bruise that wouldn't fade. You left me there eventually. I turned off my phone and tried to sleep. But the silence in my apartment felt heavier than usual, like the air itself was listening. The next day, I told myself I was being dramatic. People get nostalgic. People get weird at night. Maybe Ethan was drunk. Maybe this was his way of trying to reconnect clumsily, awkwardly, like always. I decided I wouldn't reply anymore. Let it die in the inbox. But then, the next night, at 2:03 a.m., another message arrived. Do you miss me? And when I didn't respond, I'm still there. I didn't reply to the second message. I stared at it for hours though. The screen burning into my eyes like an afterimage. I'm still there. I couldn't shake the way it was written. Not, I'm still here, but there. Like he was placing himself back in that forest, back near that awful red tree, like time had just stopped for him. It was 2:03 a.m. again. Exact same minute as the night before. I started to wonder, was this even Ethan? I mean, obviously, it was his number. Same contact, same photo. I hadn't deleted our thread. Stupid, I know. So it was still all there. His dumb selfies, his obsessive song links, those 3 a.m. spirals when he'd text 30 times in a row about how much he hated being alone. But this was different. He didn't text like this. Ethan's messages were loud. Voice notes, emojis, sarcastic punctuation. This, the lowercase, the weird grammar, the lack of anything resembling personality felt hollow. Like someone was pretending to be him. Badly, or like something had scraped up the pieces of who he was and couldn't quite glue them back together. That should have been enough to make me block the number again. But I did and single quotes. Instead, I turned the brightness on my phone all the way down, curled up under my blanket, and reread the last few texts until I passed out sometime after 4 a.m. Heart thudding with this awful rhythm I couldn't calm. The next morning, I convinced myself I'd overreacted. Sleep deprivation does weird things. So does loneliness. I'd been working from home ever since the company I freelanced for downsized. My days were a blur of spreadsheets, DoorDash, and reruns of ghost hunter shows. I hadn't seen anyone in person since my cousin's birthday dinner a month ago, so yeah, maybe part of me wanted the distraction. I checked my phone over breakfast. Nothing new. I went about my day like everything was normal. Replied to emails, ordered groceries, scrolled through TikTok. But by 2 a.m., I was wired. I sat there, staring at the clock on my phone, waiting 2:01.02:02.03.buzz.I. Swear I jumped. The sound echoed through the quiet like a gunshot. My breath hitched in my throat as I unlocked the screen. Can you come back? 3 words. That was it. I didn't respond. I just stared. And before I could think better of it, I typed, "Who is this really? ... Then, don't you remember another message? We promised, we said forever, even after I sat up straight. Even after what? That phrase, even after it, scratched something at the back of my memory, but I couldn't place it. I typed, "What are you talking about?" No answer. The next few days followed the same pattern. No texts during daylight. Nothing during dinner. But as soon as the clock struck 2:03 a.m., my phone would buzz, every single night. The tone of the texts began to shift, subtly at first, less nostalgic, less passive, more invasive. "Do you think about me when you're in bed? I watched you brush your hair tonight. You hum when you're anxious. You used to do that in the woods too." That last one chilled me, because I do hum when I'm nervous. Always have. But Ethan never mentioned it. Ever. And we hadn't seen each other in months. There's no way he could know I'd done it that night. Unless he was here. I tore through my apartment the next day. Checked every window lock. Checked the closet. The hallway. The fire escape. Nothing. Still. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I told Amanda she and I had stayed close after the breakup, mostly because she never liked Ethan. And after it ended, she finally said so. We met for coffee, at a place we both liked, and I tried to laugh it off while telling her. But when I showed her the messages, her face drained. "You're not joking," she said flatly. I shook my head. "Not even a little." "Jess," she said carefully, "Ethan's dead." The world seemed to tilt sideways for a moment. "What?" I croaked. She nodded, eyes glassy. "I just found out yesterday. His sister posted about it. They found his body near Lake Hartley." My blood went ice cold. I felt like I was going to throw up. "No," I said quietly. "No, he's been texting me every night." I thought it was him. I thought it was him messing with me. Amanda's mouth opened, but she couldn't speak. I scrolled up on my phone and showed her the most recent message. "Do you still hear me in your dreams?" She stared. "That came in 2 nights ago." I whispered. She pulled out her own phone and found the obituary. My hands trembled as I read it. Ethan Miles Reynolds, 29. Found deceased on February 6th near Hartley Woods. Estimated time of death, between January 9th and 12th. Cause undetermined. He'd been dead for almost a month when that first message came in. I almost dropped my phone. I looked up at Amanda. "What the hell is happening to me?" She didn't answer. That night, I turned my phone off and buried it under a pillow. Didn't matter. I still woke up at 2:03 a.m., heart racing like it had been jabbed with electricity. Something told me to check the phone. Just one quick peek. Just in case. I caved. When I turned it on, there was no new message, but the lock screen wallpaper had changed. It was a photo I didn't recognize. A blurry shot of a forest. Cold, pale light, leaking between skeletal trees. In the distance, barely visible near the bottom edge, was a red-stained tree, and something standing next to it. Someone looking straight at the camera. It took me a while to process what I was looking at. The photo on my lock screen wasn't a stock image or something I'd downloaded by accident. It wasn't a wallpaper from an app. It was personal, familiar, but also impossibly wrong. The red tree stood alone on a hill of frost-covered earth, its bark deep and slick, like something had bled out across the trunk. Just to its right, maybe 20 feet away, was a figure. The silhouette looked male, tall, with long arms and a crooked neck, and though the image was blurred and low light, I could swear it was watching me through the photo, like its black, distorted face was turned just enough toward the lens to register something human and horribly wrong. I tapped the screen to open the phone. The photo vanished. When I checked the wallpaper settings, it wasn't there. Not in the photo gallery. Not in downloads. Not in my files. It had appeared and then disappeared completely. I didn't sleep after that. Instead, I sat on the edge of my bed, trying to calm myself, and found my thoughts drifting back to that last weekend with Ethan. The last time we were near that tree. It was early fall, golden leaves and crisp mornings. We'd been planning the camping trip for weeks, mostly because Ethan said he wanted to get off the grid for a while. He'd been getting weird, obsessive, distracted. He'd started recording things constantly, not just videos of us, which I could understand, but odd little details. The way a moth moved against the wall, the way I spoke in my sleep. Once, he filmed the space under my bed for 5 minutes and didn't explain why. I just like preserving things, he told me. It made me uncomfortable, but I brushed it off. The trip was meant to be a reset, but it didn't work. We were 3 hours into a hike when we found the red tree. It didn't look natural. The bark was warped, twisted, and soaked with deep reddish sap that looked almost black in the shade. I remember Ethan being completely mesmerized by it. He walked right up to it, pressed his hand against the trunk, and whispered something I couldn't hear. I laughed nervously and told him it was creepy. He turned and smiled at me in this odd, blank way and said, I could live here. I think I'm supposed to. I remember those exact words. I think I'm supposed to. I told him we should keep walking. He didn't move at first, just stared at the tree like it was speaking to him. Then he took out his phone and started filming. When I tried to walk past him, he reached out and grabbed my arm. Not hard, but firm. Serious. I want to keep this moment, he said, voice low. Just in case. Just in case, what? I never asked. That night, the tension boiled over. We sat by the fire in silence, Ethan still glued to his phone, replaying the video of the tree again and again. I told him I was going to sleep early. He didn't even look up. In the middle of the night, I woke up to find him gone. His sleeping bag was empty, his shoes missing. I called his name, no answer. I waited. An hour, then 2. Finally, I grabbed a flashlight and went searching. I found him standing near the tree, in complete darkness, filming the sky. When I asked him what the hell he was doing, he just whispered, "It's almost ready." That was it for me. I was done. We had a screaming match on the trail the next morning. I told him he needed help, that he'd changed, that I didn't recognize him anymore. He said I wasn't listening, that I was blocking the signal, whatever the hell that meant. So I left. I took the keys, drove back to the city, and ignored every call and message he sent for the next 2 days. He showed up at my door the following Tuesday like nothing had happened, apologized, played it off, said he was just experimenting with a new film project and I'd overreacted. I told him I needed space, and he finally agreed. We drifted apart over the next month, with only a few awkward texts exchanged, then silence, then the message, "Hey," and the spiral began again. I started digging through my old photos, trying to find something from that trip, something that could prove I wasn't crazy. But I'd deleted most of them after the breakup. One remained, a blurry picture of Ethan holding a thermos near the fire, eyes glowing from the flash, the red tree barely visible in the corner. I didn't remember taking it. I checked the timestamp. September 12th, 2:03. A.M. My stomach flipped. That exact minute again. The pattern kept repeating. That number 2:03. It was stitched into all of this like a pulse beneath the surface. I zoomed in. On the background, the tree looked different than I remembered. Thicker, wetter, like it was almost breathing. I dropped my phone when it buzzed again. New message, 2:03 a.m. You were supposed to stay. My fingers trembled as I typed. Who are you? The dots appeared. Then, you know me. You knew me before, and you'll know me after. Another message. Look under your bed. I froze. No part of me wanted to, but I did. Slowly, I knelt down, heart slamming against my ribs like it was trying to escape. There was nothing there at first, just dust and one of my old socks. But then I noticed a folded piece of paper, half tucked against the wall. I reached for it with shaking hands, unfolded it. It was a photo. One I'd never seen before, of me asleep in my bed, face turned toward the camera, hair splayed across the pillow, mouth slightly open. The angle was from beneath, as if the picture had been taken from inside the frame of the bed. I dropped it and screamed. When I turned back to the phone, there was one more message waiting for me. I never left. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even pretend to. I sat upright on the floor of my bedroom, lights on, back to the wall like a child, terrified of the dark corners of her own house. My phone stayed on the floor next to me, screen still glowing. With the last message, I never left. I stared at it until the battery finally died. It felt like watching a fire slowly go out in a room full of shadows. I was too afraid to charge it again. Instead, I sat there, my thoughts spiraling. I tried to find rational explanations. Maybe someone stole Ethan's phone. Maybe this was a hacker. Maybe someone found old pictures of me and was messing with me in the worst way possible. But the picture under my bed, that couldn't be explained. Someone had been in my apartment. That realization hit like a hammer to the chest. I hadn't heard a break-in. Nothing was stolen. The doors were locked. I double-checked every night. But the photo was real. The image was real. Someone had been inches from my face while I slept, and they'd crawled under the bed to take that picture. I wanted to call the police, report a break-in, stalking something. But what could I say? Hi, yes, someone's been texting me from the phone of my ex-boyfriend who died a month ago, and they sent me a ghost picture from under my bed. No, I don't have any proof because the wallpaper vanished. And yes, I did check. He's definitely dead. That's what I kept circling back to. Ethan was dead. Amanda had told me, but I hadn't seen it for myself. It still felt distant, like gossip, like an idea floating in the air, but not quite real. So I did what I always did when I needed to make something real. I Googled it. I powered on my laptop and searched Ethan Reynolds' obituary. And there it was. Plain as day. White background. Serif font A. A photo of him smiling, like he always did when he was pretending to be casual in front of a camera. A forced smirk. No teeth. Ethan Miles Reynolds, age 29, passed away unexpectedly in early January. I stopped breathing the text. Went on. His remains were discovered near Hartley Forest on February 6th. Ethan was a passionate filmmaker and loved being outdoors. He is survived by his mother, sister, and his beloved cat, Binks. A private service will be held. I couldn't finish reading. I clicked away, my fingers trembling on the trackpad. I sat there in silence for a long time, just staring at my desktop wallpaper like it might shift or speak or start melting. My body felt disconnected, floating somewhere just above my bones, too light and too heavy at the same time. Because now it was real, he was dead. He had been dead the entire time I'd been getting those messages. That was supposed to make things clearer. It didn't. It made everything worse. I charged my phone with trembling hands and turned it back on just after sunrise. The screen lit up, and I winced as if it might scream at me. Nothing, no new messages. The wallpaper hadn't changed again. The photo was gone, vanished like it had never existed, but it had existed. I remembered every grainy pixel of it, the angle, the tree, the figure, that horrible sense that it was watching me. I snapped a photo of the underbed picture and shoved the original into a Ziploc bag. I needed to show someone. I needed someone to believe me. That evening, I called Amanda again. I asked if we could meet, and this time I didn't try to hide how shaken I was. We sat in her car outside a quiet park, the windows fogged slightly from our breath. She looked at me with real concern in her eyes. "You said he was found in the woods," I said. "Which part?" She hesitated, then said quietly, "Near the old ranger station, North End." Near the red tree, I finished 4. "Huh," she looked at me sharply. "Yeah, how did you?" "I think it's connected," I said. "I think that tree, something about it, is wrong. It was wrong when we found it, and now..." I pulled out my phone and showed her the picture I'd taken of the photo from under the bed. She squinted at it, then leaned closer. "Jess, what is this?" "Someone took it, of me, while I was sleeping, from inside my room." Her face went pale. "Jesus Christ," she whispered. "I'm being watched, Amanda. I don't know by who. I don't know if it's someone pretending to be Ethan or if it's..." I lowered my voice. "Him, don't say that," she whispered sharply, like saying it aloud might make it true, but she was shaking. Later that night, she texted me a link. It was to a local police press release. I clicked it, expecting the same obituary stuff. But this was different. This was unpublished. One of those documents they put out quietly for public record, not intended for wide circulation. It was a death investigation report summary, and there were 2 things in it that made my blood go ice cold. Body found in partial fetal position under dense brush. No sign of animal predation. Eyes open at time of death. Right hand clenched around object later identified as film canister. Phone not recovered. Believed to have been lost or damaged prior to death. My fingers hovered over the screen as I reread that line. His phone wasn't found, but I'd been getting messages from his number for weeks. And the film canister. Ethan hadn't used film in years. Not since college. He'd switched to digital, like everyone else. I remembered him mocking the hipsters who lugged around old cameras. He called it faux nostalgia. So why had he gone back? What the hell had he filmed? That night, I locked every door and window. I pushed a chair against my bedroom door and left the hallway light on. I debated turning off my phone, but some sick part of me wanted the next message, needed it, because every message brought answers, or clues, or at the very least, a direction. And right now, I was spinning with nowhere to go. 2:02a.m. My breathing slowed. 2:03. A.M. Buzz. My chest seized. "I see you now. You're almost ready, we can finish what we started, and one more line. Check the mirror. Check the mirror, that's all the last message, said Dot. It was 2:03 a.m. again, every single time, like clockwork. That number was beginning to feel less like a time and more like a countdown. I stared at the message for a long time, heart thudding behind my ribs. Not pounding, not that kind of fear. This was slower, heavier, like my body knew something I didn't, like it was trying to warn me before my brain caught up. I didn't move for a full minute, but then, like I was being pulled on a string, I stood up and walked to the bathroom. Everything in my apartment was silent. Not a creak, not a gust of wind, just that still, unnatural kind of quiet that never lasts. I flipped on the bathroom light. My face looked back at me, tired, pale, shadowed. I leaned in, slowly, examining every detail. My own eyes, my hair, my breath fogging the glass. I looked for something, anything out of place. Nothing, until I turned off the light. For a split second, barely a second, I saw something move in the mirror, not behind me, in the reflection, just over my shoulder. Something tall, watching eye. Flicked the light back on. Nothing, just me. Just empty space behind me. But the cold lingered. Not the kind from drafty windows or faulty radiators. The kind that wraps around your spine like icy hands pressing down, like a presence. I backed away from the mirror and closed the bathroom door behind me, heart in my throat. I couldn't sleep after that. Again, I sat up and reread the message. Again, checked the mirror. Was it a threat, a clue, a memory? Something about it gnawed at me. I opened my photos and looked at the selfie I'd taken near the red tree. The one Ethan had snapped of me when I wasn't paying attention. My smile was half-formed, my eyes squinting against the light. Just a normal memory. But something about it felt different now. I zoomed in, not on me, but on the background. There. It was again, the red tree. And next to it, faint and almost unnoticeable, was a blur. I never saw it before, but now it looked like a shape, like someone was standing behind the tree, just far enough away to not draw attention, just close enough to be real once you saw it. I snapped my laptop shut and shoved the phone under my pillow. Like that would help. Like anything could help. The next morning, I did what I swore I wouldn't. I called the number. I don't know what I expected. A dead line, maybe. An out-of-service message. Static instead. It rang dot, once, twice, 3 times, and then click, but no one spoke. I stayed on the line, whispering hello. Ethan, over and over, barely breathing. I could hear something. Not static, not breathing, something distant. Wind, no leaves, like wind rustling through dead leaves. A faint creaking sound, a soft, rhythmic thumping, like rope swinging against wood dot, and then faint whispering, muffled, garbled, but not random. It was my own voice. I know how that sounds, but I'm telling you, it was me. I couldn't make out what I was saying, but the cadence, the tone, I knew my own voice, and hearing it echo back from that dead phone number made me feel like my skin had turned inside out. I ended the call and sat there in stunned silence. Then my phone buzzed again. Liked hearing you again. You sound like you remember now. What the hell did that mean? What was I supposed to be remembering? I drove out to Ethan's old apartment later that day. It wasn't something I planned, more like a compulsion. I told myself it was just to see if someone else had his phone. Maybe a roommate, maybe someone messing with his stuff, maybe, I don't know, closure. I hadn't been there since the breakup. The place looked almost exactly the same: beige walls, crooked blinds, that stupid rusted mailbox that stuck when you opened it. I rang the doorbell. No answer. The neighbor across the hall poked her head out. "You looking for Ethan?" I hesitated. "Yeah, kind of." She shook her head. "He's gone. Hasn't been back since December. Thought he moved out or something. Landlord said the lease ran out." "Did you see anyone else go inside?" I asked. She frowned. "No, but sometimes I heard noises after he stopped coming, like footsteps, low humming. I figured he gave someone else a key." Humming. I hum when I'm nervous. Was someone mimicking me? I thanked her and left. But I didn't go home. I drove, aimlessly, until I found myself parked at the edge of town. Heart pounding. Then I made a decision I still don't fully understand. I texted the number again. "Why are you doing this?" The reply came instantly. "Because you left me, because you lied, because you promised then another. I want to show you that night. The dreams started. I saw the forest, saw the tree, only it wasn't a tree anymore. It was taller, stretched, pulsing, like something alive. Its bark split down the center, revealing something like a wound, something gaping and wrong. A door dot, and standing next to it was me, but not me, same body, same clothes, same posture, but the eyes were all wrong. Too dark, too empty. I woke up screaming, drenched in sweat, fingers clutching my sheets like I'd been hanging off a cliff. My phone was in my hand. No idea how it got there. Screen lit up. One message. "We remember different things. That line has haunted me ever since. Not you remember, or I remember. We like something shared. Like there was something between me and Ethan, or whatever was wearing his. Voice that connected us in a way I didn't understand. The red tree, the mirror, the voice on the phone, the dreams. Something happened out there in those woods. Something I forgot, or chose to forget. And now whatever it was, is trying to come back through." I was done pretending I could handle this on my own. Something had shifted after that last dream. I woke up with the feeling that I'd brought something back with me, that the dream hadn't stayed in the dream, that it had followed me. The room felt different, heavier, denser, like I wasn't alone. There were no new messages when I opened my phone, no missed calls, no photos changed, no voices whispering through the speaker, just stillness. But it was the kind of stillness that waits, like a breath being held. I needed answers, so I did something I never thought I'd do. I went to the police. I didn't walk in ranting about ghosts or haunted phones. I'm not stupid. I was careful. I played the concerned ex-girlfriend card. I said I heard Ethan had passed, and that I wanted to offer some information. I said I had been receiving strange texts from someone claiming to be him, and I thought it might be connected to whoever found the body. That was enough to get me a 10-minute sit down with a detective named Marcus Dempsey. He was in his late 40s, maybe. Tired eyes, coffee breath. The kind of guy who looked like he'd seen enough weird to know when someone wasn't making it up, or at least not entirely. He asked to see the texts. I showed him. Not all of them, just the ones that wouldn't land me in a psych hold. He scrolled, frowning more with each message. "Numbers untraceable," he muttered. "At least not without a subpoena." "I thought his phone wasn't found," I said. He looked up sharply. Where'd you hear that? I froze. It was in a press statement. It wasn't, he said. I didn't respond. Detective Dempsey leaned back in his chair, tapping a pen against the desk. Look, he said, I can't tell you everything, but I can tell you this much. When we found the body, we thought it had been there for weeks, nearly a month, but there were inconsistencies. I asked. The body was exposed, not buried. No signs of animal interference. Minimal decomposition considering the exposure. He scratched his beard, uncomfortable, and his eyes were open. He said it like that meant something, like it mattered, like it made it worse. What do you mean? I asked quietly. There was no clouding, he said, pupils still visible. That doesn't line up with how long he'd supposedly been dead. Not in that environment. So, what are you saying? He looked down at the phone, then back at me. I'm saying maybe he wasn't dead the whole time. I left the station. Shaking, I sat in my car for 20 minutes, staring at the dashboard, trying to hold myself together. If what he said was true, if Ethan hadn't been dead right away, that meant someone left him out there, alone, dying slowly. Or worse, and if he had been alive after the first few days, then who had been texting me? Or was it him? Was that even possible? Was I texting a dying man, stranded in the woods, losing his mind? The idea made my stomach churn. I thought about the text that said you left me there. Was that literal? Did he think I had done this, or let it happen? I was so deep in my own head that I nearly missed the buzz from my phone. It was 2:03, P.M.not A.M. The first time the message came during daylight, he told me to wait here. He said you'd come. Eventually my skin crawled. Not just because of the content, though it was bad enough, but because the pronouns had changed. He told me to wait. He said you'd come. There was someone else, something else. I stared at the message for a long time, then typed back with trembling fingers, who's he? ... The one who watches the one under the tree another. Message came a second later. You almost saw him last time, didn't remember seeing anyone. But then I remembered the photo from the trip, the blur near the red tree, the thing I dismissed at the time, the thing Ethan had to have seen, to Dot. Was that what he'd been filming? Was that what had consumed him? I had to know more. That night, I logged into Ethan's old cloud storage, the one he'd used for projects. I still had access, left over from when I used to help him edit. Most of it was clutter, old scripts, audio tests, abandoned YouTube thumbnails. But there was a folder I hadn't seen before. AFTR inside with 13 videos, each file named by date and time, all from early January, days after the estimated time of death. I clicked on the first dot. The screen filled with static, then slowly resolved into a jittery, low-res shot of the forest. The red tree, a pile of stones near its base. The camera moved, shakily, as if someone was crawling with it. Panting could be heard, ragged, panicked breaths. Then a whisper, "Don't look at him, don't look at him. He sees you when you look." I recognized the voice. It was Ethan. I felt my blood go cold. He was alive in this footage, barely, breathing heavy, muttering. The camera shaking like he could barely hold it. He turned the lens towards something off-screen. A shadow moved between trees, then the feed cut to black. I watched all 13 videos, back to back, every one worse than the last. The final clip was only 10 seconds long. Ethan, staring into the camera with glassy eyes. face covered in scratches, blood on his neck. He was whispering something over and over, but the audio was garbled. I slowed the video down, cleaned the audio. He was saying, "It's her now, she'll remember, she'll finish it," over and over and over. The last frame of the video was Ethan reaching toward the lens, and behind him, just barely visible, was a shape standing in the trees. Long arms, no face, head tilted too far to one side. The same shape from the photo that replaced my wallpaper. I closed the laptop and curled up on the couch, unable to stop shaking. This wasn't grief. This wasn't trauma. This was something else. Something had gotten into Ethan, into his thoughts, into his camera, into his phone, and now it was inside mine. The final message that night didn't come at 2:03. .m, it came at 1:59, early, like it couldn't wait anymore. "He's closer now, he likes the sound of your voice, he wants to wear your face next." I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, could barely function after watching those videos and reading that last message. "He wants to wear your face next." Something inside me broke. There was no normal anymore. No, maybe I'm imagining things, or it's just a sick prank. The videos were real. The voice was real. The texts weren't glitches or hallucinations. And whatever had been following Ethan out there, it wasn't done with him. Or me, it had marked me. Or maybe it always had. I started pacing in my apartment like a caged animal. Every window stayed locked. Every light stayed on. Every mirror covered. I threw out the photo that had been under my bed. But that night, a new one appeared on my nightstand. Another picture of me, this time from behind, taken while I was cooking dinner. My neck exposed, the faint outline of something tall and thin reflected in the microwave's glass door. That was it. I decided to go back to the woods. I didn't tell Amanda. I didn't tell anyone. I just packed a bag, grabbed a flashlight, a knife I'd never used for anything more serious than opening Amazon boxes, and drove north toward Hartley Forest, back to the place where it started, back to the red tree dot. It was late afternoon when I arrived, grey sky, air heavy with moisture. The trailhead looked almost untouched, like no one had hiked it in months. A sign leaned sideways near the tree line, half covered in moss. "Caution, area closed due to unstable terrain." I stepped around it without hesitation. The forest felt thicker than I remembered, older, like the trees had grown in tighter, leaning in on me. Watching, I walked for over an hour, flashlight off, letting memory guide me. The deeper I went, the quieter everything became. No birdsong, no rustling, no life. Eventually, the path curved, and there it was. The red tree, just like in the photo, just like in the dream. Its bark looked wet, the trunk wider than I remembered. I stood there for several minutes, frozen, heart hammering. Then my phone buzzed. 2:03 p.m. "Thank you for coming back. He's been waiting another." "Buzz, do you hear him now?" I didn't hear anything at first, but then I closed my eyes and listened, and I swear to you, I heard whispering. Not from behind me, not in the wind, from beneath me. The roots it was, like the tree was breathing, exhaling voices through the soil. Ethan's voice and mine, faint, fragmented. "Left me here, don't forget. We made a promise. You said forever." Then something else. A new voice. Not human, not human, not even close. Something deep, guttural, clicking between syllables, like an insect chewing glass. I dropped to my knees, pressing my ear to the ground like a lunatic, and I heard it say, "Open the door." I shot back like I'd been burned. The air was wrong now, thick and hot, like it was pressing against me. The light dimmed, not from clouds, but like the sun itself had backed away. My phone buzzed again. No text, just a video. I hit play. It was a live feed of me from above, like a drone shot, but there was no sound, no signal, no way that should have been possible. I looked up. Nothing but the screen showed something behind me, slowly turning, a shape, tall, slouched, like it was unfolding from inside the tree. My legs moved before my brain caught up. I ran. I didn't care where, just away, through the underbrush, branches slashing my arms, my lungs on fire. But the forest never seemed to change. Like I was looping, I passed the same crooked stump 3 times. The 4th time, there was something. Sitting on it, it was Ethan, but wrong. His skin looked stretched, loose, like it didn't quite fit. His eyes were too wide, mouth barely moving, and he whispered, "It's your turn." I screamed and kept running. Eventually, I tripped and fell hard. My flashlight skidded out of reach. I was bleeding, knees torn open, hands scraped raw. Crawled until I couldn't anymore. And then everything stopped. The air shifted, and I heard something walking, slow, deliberate. Behind me, crunch, pause, crunch. I didn't turn round. I couldn't. The voice was right by my ear. "Do you remember? Yet?" I blacked out. When I came to, it was daylight. Real daylight. Birds chirping. Wind moving through the trees like it was supposed to. Everything was normal, like nothing had happened, like it had spit me back out. I stumbled back to my car, half so. I was going to wake up in my bed any second, but I didn't. The pain was real. The blood on my arms was real. The cuts, the bruises, the dirt in my mouth, real. The only thing that wasn't there was my phone, gone. Gone, just gone. I spent the next 2 days in bed. No calls, no messages, no dreams. I didn't tell Amanda. I didn't want to be put under psychiatric watch. I didn't want anyone knowing what I'd seen out there. But on the 3rd night, at 2:03 a.m., the laptop woke itself up. I hadn't touched it. I hadn't even opened the lid. It chimed once, and a folder appeared on the desktop, RAMMBR, inside. A single video file. I clicked it, and what I saw made my blood turn to ice. It was footage from a handheld camera, night vision, breathing loud in the mic. The camera swung toward a familiar tree, the red tree. The figure holding the camera walked toward it, stopped, looked down, and there, crouched beside the tree, was me, whispering, digging. And when I turned toward the lens, the camera caught my eyes, black and hollow and smiling. The video cut to static. That was 3 nights ago, and tonight, 2:03 a.m., is coming again. I don't know what happens next, but I think I'm starting to remember, and I think that's exactly what it wants. It started with a word, whispered behind my ears when I thought I was alone, echoing through the vents, staring back at me from half-remembered dreams and clouded memories. Promise. That's what it kept saying. You made a promise. You broke the promise. It's your turn now. The word had claws. It followed me from room to room, from waking to sleep. Even in silence, I could hear it. Like a ringtone I couldn't find the source of, like a splinter buried deep behind my eyes. I hadn't left the apartment since coming back from the woods. I couldn't. Not after what I saw in that video. Me, hunched beside the red tree, whispering, digging, eyes black and dead. I wanted to believe it was edited, faked, some sick hallucination. But the way I moved, the way my hair fell, the scar on my wrist, it was me. Just not Dot or not anymore. I started tearing through my old notebooks, journals, boxes of Ethan's things I hadn't been able to throw away after the breakup. He used to write everything down, sketch symbols he'd seen in dreams, scrawl half-finished mantras across napkins and receipts. I found one of those napkins taped inside an old notebook. The ink was smudged, but I could still make it out. Roots bind, eyes blind, whispers remind. Underneath it, he'd scribbled 203 when it looks back. I didn't understand it at first, but the deeper I looked, the more I realized Ethan had known something was wrong. Long before I did, even before the trip, maybe even before we met. I found an old notebook buried under the bed, wrapped in an old hoodie of his. The pages were filled with notes from the woods, sketches of trees with mouths, shadows with no heads, circles with eyes drawn shut. There was one page near the back, though, that stopped me cold. It was dated the day we broke up. She saw it. I tried to block her view, but she saw. That's when it marked her. Maybe it was always going to. I told it I'd stay. I told it I'd keep my promise, but it wants her to. Maybe more. And then, the route is not the end. It's the doorway. That's when it all started to come back. Not like a flood, more like cracks in the wall. Pieces I hadn't looked at since that night. The last night in the woods, I remembered Ethan waking me up, pulling me out of the tent, not frantic, calm to calm. He kept whispering, "Just watch. You'll understand." We walked through the forest barefoot, no flashlight, just the pale moon guiding us through skeletal branches. We reached the red tree. I remember him kneeling, digging with his hands, muttering things under his breath. Then he looked up at me and said, "It won't come through unless we both agree." And then he asked me to say it, to promise. I said no, at least. I think I said no, but the memory wavers there, like a candle flickering. In the dark, did I say yes? Did I speak the words? Is that what this all is? A broken promise being enforced by something that doesn't forget. The next night, I left my laptop on, camera covered, mic off. I unplugged everything, turned off the router, and turned my phone to airplane mode. I wanted silence, but 2:03 a.m. came anyway, and this time it didn't need the screen. The voice spoke from inside the walls. "You made a deal. You tried to bury it. We dug you back up." I sat up, hands over my ears, trying to drown it out, and then the mirror cracked. Not shattered, just one sharp, perfect crack straight down the middle. I hadn't touched it. Nothing had moved. It just split, like something inside was pushing out. I called Amanda the next day. She didn't answer, so I drove to her apartment. When she opened the door, her face went pale, like she was looking at someone she hadn't seen in years, or someone she thought she'd never see again. "You're not supposed to be here," she said. I blinked. "What?" She hesitated. "I mean, I thought you said you were going away." After the voicemail, my mouth went dry. "What voicemail?" Amanda looked uncomfortable. "You left me one last night. At 2:03, you said you had to go back to the forest. You said you remembered everything, that it would be better if I didn't follow." I shook my head. "I didn't leave any message." She pulled out her phone, found the voicemail, and pressed play. And it was my voice. But not me. The cadence was off. The words slower, echoing, like someone dragging their fingernails across the back of my throat while speaking through me. The last thing the voice said was, "I remember now. And so will you." Then static Amanda looked like she might cry. "Jess," she said, "what did you do out there that night?" I gave in. I pulled up the last video from the Remember folder. It had auto-named itself when she said yes, MP4, double quotes. Clicked it at first. Darkness, muffled wind, then Ethan's voice and mine. We were whispering together, chanting, words I didn't recognize, but my mouth formed them anyway. My voice was in sync with his, perfectly matched, echoed, harmonized like a prayer. Then we stopped, and something moved beneath us. The camera turned down, the dirt shifted. A hole began to open, as if breathing. Then something reached out, not a hand, not an arm, a root, black, wet, twitching. It wrapped around my ankle, and I didn't scream. I smiled. I shut the laptop and vomited in the sink, not just from horror, from recognition that had happened. That was the part I had forgotten. The moment I agreed, the moment it marked me. The final text came the next night, 2:03 a.m. It's time to finish it, come back, and remember, the rester will bring it to you. I didn't go back to sleep that night. I sat on the living room floor, knees hugged to my chest, facing the front door, waiting. I didn't know if I was waiting for them to drag me back, or if I'd finally find the courage to go on my own. All I knew was something was coming, or maybe someone. And worse, I'd invited it. I'd let it in. It started raining around 3:30 a.m. Not a gentle rain, a wall of it, sudden and violent, like a dam had broken in the sky. It beat against the windows in furious rhythmic pulses, like footsteps, like something pacing outside. Counting down, lightning lit up the apartment, just for a second. And in that second, I saw a reflection in the glass, not mine. Something taller, right behind me. When I turned around, nothing was there, of course. I didn't leave the house the next day, didn't eat, barely moved. Amanda texted me, asking if I was okay. I ignored it. What could I say? Hey, remember that trip to the woods? The one with the creepy tree? Yeah, turns out I made a pact with something ancient and wrong, and now it wants me back. How's your Tuesday going? No, this was mine to deal with. It always had been, at sunset. I stood in front of the mirror, again. The same one that cracked. I peeled off the towel I'd been using to cover it. The line down the center was darker now, like something had seeped into it. The glass felt warm to the touch. Alive. I stared at my reflection. And for the first time, it didn't blink with me, didn't move with me, it just watched. Then its mouth moved, not mine. Do you remember the dirt? The voice was inside my head, not sound, thought, heavy and rusted like chains dragging across concrete. I gripped the sides of the sink. Bracing myself, the mirror darkened, not because of light, but because of memory, and suddenly, I was back there. It was night again. The woods, Ethan and I, kneeling by the red tree. The roots were shifting, curling like fingers around us. He was crying, so was I, not from fear, from relief. We were giving something back, feeding it, binding ourselves to it. We whispered the same phrase, again and again. Bury the lie, keep the eye. We are not what dies. Then we dug, we buried something. Not an object, a part of ourselves. I remember shoving it into the soil, something black and wet and pulsing like a heart. It was mine, my voice. We gave it up, and it gave us something in return. I stumbled back from the mirror. Gasping, I could still feel the dirt on my hands, under my nails, in my throat. And when I turned round, my phone was on again, even though the battery had been dead for days. 203A.M, new message, ready to finish what we buried. I didn't answer, not. With words I packed a bag. Again. The drive back to Hartley Forest felt different this time. The road seemed longer, like it had stretched since last time. The trees looked like teeth, lining the asphalt like a jaw waiting to snap shut. When I pulled into the lot, I wasn't surprised to find it empty. Fog clung low to the ground, curling round my ankles like smoke. This time, I didn't need the trail. I knew the way. It greeted me like an old friend, the red tree, wider than I remembered, taller the bark, now split open like a wound that hadn't healed. It breathed, I could hear it. The earth around it throbbed. I stepped forward and felt it respond. The roots shifted. Something under the dirt stirred, and then I heard him. Ethan, not a memory. Not a ghost, his actual voice, coming from below, muffled, broken, calling my name. I dropped to my knees and started digging. I didn't hesitate. The soil was loose, like it had been waiting for me. My fingers bled, my nails cracked. I didn't care. I dug, and then I found it. Not Ethan, not a body, a mirror. Buried exactly where I remembered. It was old, shattered, covered in veins of rust and moss. I wiped it clean and saw myself. Only it wasn't me. Same face, same clothes, but the reflection smiled and said, "Welcome back." Then the roots burst from the ground. They didn't grab me. They embraced me, coiled around my arms, my legs, my neck, and I let them, because now I remembered everything, what we gave, what we took, what we became. I opened my mouth and whispered the words, "We are not what dies." The forest answered, a roar without sound, a vibration that shattered thought, and in that moment, I felt my reflection step in, not out. In it filled me, and I saw all of it. Every time it had worn someone's voice, every time it had stood behind someone just out of frame, every time it had whispered in the night and been dismissed as a dream. It had been me, or parts of me, or the version of me that never came back from the woods, until now. I woke up in my bed, fully dressed, hands clean, phone on the nightstand, no messages, nothing, just silence, and for a moment, I thought maybe it was over. Maybe I broke the loop. Maybe I won then. I got the email. No subject, no sender, just a video file. rewatch.mp for I. Clicked it. It was footage of Amanda last night, sleeping, peaceful, then her phone lit. Up, 2:03 a.m, a message. From my number, "See you soon then," the screen flickered, and my voice, the wrong version of my voice, whispered, "We are not what dies." Amanda didn't answer my calls. I tried 5 times, left 2 voicemails, and even drove to her apartment, banging on the door until the neighbors peeked out and glared at me. But nothing. Her blinds were drawn. Her car was gone. Her mailbox was full. Something wasn't right. That video, the one with her sleeping, the phone lighting up, it wasn't just a warning. It was a recording, a moment captured, a marking. just like it had been for me. That's how it started with Ethan too. The texts, the dreams, the mirror. Now it was Amanda's turn, and I had given it to her. Or maybe it had used me to do it. Maybe that was always the plan. I drove aimlessly for hours, trying to clear my head, but the woods kept creeping back into my thoughts. Not just the red tree, everything. The loop, the deal, the burial. Each time I replayed the moment in the forest, more details bled through. There'd been a circle carved into the dirt. There'd been teeth, not lying in the soil, growing from it, lining the inside of the hole like the mouth of some underground creature, gnashing slowly while Ethan whispered his vows. How could I have forgotten that? And what else had I blocked out? I drove back home around midnight, exhausted and paranoid. Every pair of headlights behind me felt like it was following me too closely. Every dark window on the street seemed to hide someone watching. The moment I stepped through the door, my phone buzzed. Not with a text this time, a FaceTime call from Amanda. My throat went dry. I stared at it for a long time before I answered. Her face filled the screen, but her eyes were wrong, too wide, too still, and the room behind her, not her apartment. Just blackness, nothingness. "Jess," she said, voice smooth, slow, "why didn't you come back for me?" I didn't answer. "You promised," she said. "I didn't," I whispered. "You weren't there." She tilted her head. That impossible. Stillness only things pretending to be human can do. "You left me beneath it. You buried me. You said we'd share it." My hands trembled. This wasn't Amanda. This was the voice, the thing, wearing her like a mask. And then she leaned, close to the screen. And her smile, glitched, yes, glitched, tot her mouth stuttered sideways, then widened far too much. "You shared it with me. Now I'll share it with them." The screen went black. I barely slept. When I did, I dreamt of my reflection again. But this time, there were others, not just me, hundreds of them. All lined up along the edge of the red tree's clearing, kneeling, faces stitched with root-like tendrils, eyes hollowed into bark. Each one turned to me at once, and they said, in one terrible, united voice, "We remember the promise." When I woke up, I had 3 messages, all from unknown numbers. Each one had a photo, different people, each asleep in their beds, each time stamped 203, .m. Each with the same caption: "We heard your story. We want to believe. We want to remember." I didn't know any of them. Random names, different cities, different ages, but they'd all been marked, and it was spreading. That's when it hit me. It wasn't just about Ethan or Amanda or even me. This thing wasn't killing us. It was using us. It needed storytellers, messengers, hosts it wanted to be. Remembered. That was the whole point. The videos, the photos, the messages, the mirrors. It lived through memory. The more people remembered it, the stronger it got. The more roots it grew, the more doors it opened. And I, with my obsession, my need to know the truth, I had been the perfect conduit. I had helped it. I checked my YouTube account that afternoon. It was empty, completely wiped. No videos, no playlists, no login history, just one uploaded clip, untitled.mp4. I hovered over it, heart pounding. Thumbnail, the red tree length, 203 of course. I hit play. The screen filled with static. Then, my voice. "Hi, if you're watching this, It's already started for you too. It starts with a text, then the mirror, then the dreams, but it ends with the tree. The video cut to rapid flashes, images I didn't remember recording. Amanda, asleep, her mouth hanging open, unnaturally wide. Ethan digging frantically with his bare hands. Myself reflected in a shattered mirror, grinning wide enough to tear. A faceless thing crouched in the corner of a forest clearing, hunched and heaving, then silence, and text across a black screen. We are not what dies. Do you remember yet? The video had 2.03 million views. No likes, no comments, no channel listed. Just views. Just views. As I watched, the number kept ticking upward. People were seeing it, thousands by the minute, and if I was right, every view was a seed, a new route, another person letting it in. I shut the laptop and screamed into a pillow until my throat gave out. But deep down, I knew it was too late. You don't unring a bell like this. You don't uproot something once. It started to spread. You don't bury what's already inside you. That night, I stared into the mirror again. This time, I didn't flinch. I reached out and touched the crack. It was warm, it pulsed. My reflection blinked. Before I did, then she whispered, "Tell them what we did. Tell them it's not over. Make them look. It's not just me anymore." That's the scariest part. This thing, whatever it is, doesn't need to crawl out of the woods anymore. It doesn't need dirt or roots or even trees. Not anymore. It has something better. Us, our devices, our memories, our curiosity, and worst of all, our need to share. I spent the next 2 days watching the video view count tick higher for million. 6.7 million, 9.3 million. Every second, someone else opened a door. Every second, someone else looked. There were no comments, no likes, no way to trace where the video had come from. I didn't upload it, but it had my voice, my face, my confession. Somehow, it pulled from footage I didn't know existed. Angles I never filmed. Scenes I couldn't possibly remember because they hadn't happened yet. There was one frame, just one, buried deep in the static, that showed me lying on the forest floor, eyes rolled back, mouth open like I was screaming. I hadn't been back there again, but that image said I would be soon. Amanda still hadn't surfaced. No social media, no messages. Her phone went straight to voicemail. I filed a missing persons report, but the officer barely looked up. She said she'd keep it on file and told me I seemed anxious. She handed me a pamphlet on grief. I wanted to scream at her, shake her until she understood what was really going on. But what would I say? A video I didn't upload is spreading a forest-dwelling memory parasite that uses storytelling to plant itself in human consciousness. Right? They'd lock me up. And maybe they should, because I've started to see things even when I'm awake now. Not just in mirrors, not just in dreams. It began with the photos. Random ones on my phone would suddenly change. A picture of my breakfast. The egg yolk turned black, and roots sprouted out of the toast. A selfie I took in my kitchen now showed a hand on my shoulder. No one else was home. Another showed Amanda sleeping on my couch. Only I don't remember that ever happening, and in the corner of the photo, barely visible, the edge of the red tree. Then came the glitches, not technical ones, personal ones. I'd walk into the bathroom and find myself already standing in the mirror, staring back, lips moving slightly, but I wasn't saying anything. I'd blink, and I'd be alone again. I opened my laptop to find a Word doc titled Roots Weep in the Soil of the Willing. It was written hundreds of times, my name at the bottom, each version spelled slightly differently, as if different versions of me had signed it. I got a voicemail from my own number. 2:03 a.m., of course. My voice, but deeper, distorted, cracking. With static, it whispered, "You can't forget something that remembers you. You opened the door, Jess. You're the archive now." And then, laughter. Not mine, not human, like wind howling through a mouth made of wood. I started noticing strange comments on other YouTube videos. Not mine, random channels, cooking tutorials, gaming streams, haul videos, places this thing shouldn't be. They all said similar things. Red tree at 2:03. She dug it up. We all saw it. I can't sleep anymore. I looked into the mirror and it smiled first. Some had only symbols. Circles with vertical slashes. Roots branching downward from a single black dot. Ethan had drawn those. Too, he wasn't the first. And I'm not the last. The next breakthrough came when I received an email. No sender. No subject, just a link. Normally, I'd never click it, but I did. It led to a live stream, one view at me. A static-filled video, feed of a forest at night, lit only by moonlight. Silent, at first, then the camera panned, slowly to the side. There was someone standing between the trees. Far back, motionless, I leaned closer, and my blood went cold. It was me staring back, not blinking, not breathing, just watching. And then, I smiled. The screen cut to black. I shut the laptop and screamed. Again, it's becoming routine. Now terror at 2:03. Voicemails from the dead, photos that rewrite themselves, and the quiet realization that I've become something else, or something else has become me. I started documenting everything in a journal, not digitally, pen and paper, because the files kept changing themselves. I'd write a sentence and come back to find it different. I'm losing control, became. We were never meant to keep control. I need help, became. Help them remember. My name is Jessica Wren, became. My name was Jessica. I still haven't told anyone. Not my family. Not co-workers. No friends. What's left of me doesn't want to be saved. It wants to finish the transmission. That's what I've started calling it now. The transmission, the video, the dream, the text, the root system of memory that burrows through minds and waits like a seed until someone's curiosity waters it. And then the cycle begins again. It got Ethan. It got Amanda. Now it's got millions. And it's using me to talk to them every night at 2:03. I wake up saying things out loud in my sleep. I record them now. One night, I said. The forest grows inside the screen now. Another, we're all trees when it's done with us. And last night, she said yes. Now she says everything. I'm not writing this to ask for help. I think it's too late for that. I'm writing this because I know someone else will read it. You will, maybe, you already have. Maybe you've been following the story. Maybe you saw the video, and now, maybe, you're next. If you start getting texts at 2:03 a.m., don't reply. If your reflection ever blinks before you do, don't look back. If you hear scratching in your walls or roots beneath your floor, it's already started. And if you wake up with dirt under your fingernails and don't remember why, then you've already promised. The mirror, it was always there, watching, waiting. After everything, the woods, the videos, the messages, It was the one constant, but now it was different. It wasn't just cracked. It wasn't just pulsing. It was alive, and it wasn't alone. I started noticing it more, the way my reflection didn't quite mimic my movements, how sometimes it lingered for a beat too long, how its smile was just a fraction wider than mine at first. I thought it was stress, the long nights, the terror, but then I started testing it. One night I raised my hand slowly, and my reflection raised its left hand instead of the right. I blinked. It blinked before I did, and it whispered, not with sound, with thought, "Look deeper." I couldn't help myself. I touched the glass, and the surface rippled like water. My fingertips sank in, cold, wet, and alive. I yanked back, heart hammering. The mirror was a door. That night, I slept with the mirror covered, but it slipped its veil. Away by morning, when I uncovered it, there was a new message scratched into the glass, as if written by invisible fingers. Remember the root. I stared at it until my eyes blurred, and then the memory hit me again. The root, not just the tree, not just the dirt, the root beneath the forest floor, beneath the soil where Ethan and I had buried something. It wasn't just a metaphor, it was a place, a doorway, a prison, and worse, a seed. I found myself back at the edge of the forest again, only this time I wasn't walking, I was being pulled, drawn by a voice that wasn't mine. Something ancient, something hungry. The red tree loomed. Its bark was slick with sap and something darker. Roots twisted, writhing like snakes. A hollow opened at its base, a perfect circle, black as night. I couldn't resist. I stepped inside. The world shifted, colors bled, sounds warped, and beneath my feet was nothing but darkness. Then I saw it, a root, thick and pulsing, growing through the void. It stretched toward me. I reached out the moment our skin touched. A flood of memories slammed into me. Not mine, not Ethan's single quotes. Others, people who had come before. People who had been consumed. People who had been marked each, whispering, "We are not what dies." The root pulsed with their voices. A chorus of sorrow and rage became memory never meant to be forgotten, and I knew this was the secret the mirror held, the truth behind the videos, the messages, the dreams. We are the roots, now bound to the tree, bound to the tree, bound to the story. I woke up gasping. The mirror cracked further, lines spreading like veins, and on the glass, a new phrase, "Open the door. Say the words." I don't know what door, dot, or what words, but I feel them coming. The pull is stronger, the voices louder, and tonight, 2:03 a.m. will come again. I'm scared, but I'm ready, because whatever happens next, it's already inside me. The mirror didn't just watch anymore, it commanded. 4 nights, I sat staring at it, feeling its cold gaze crawling through the cracks in the glass and deep into my skin. It whispered the words again and again. Say the words. Open the door, finish. The promise, at first, I resisted, but resistance became exhaustion, and exhaustion became surrender. One night, around 2:03 a.m., I lit a candle, placed it before the mirror, and spoke aloud. We are not what dies. The room grew cold. The candle flickered wildly, then went out in the darkness. The mirror surface began to ripple, not like glass breaking, like water, stirred by a stone dot. And then the voice came dot deep, echoing. Ancient, you have spoken. The vow, you have opened the door. Now the root will rise. Suddenly, the floor beneath me trembled. Cracks spider-webbed across the floorboards from the gaps. A dark liquid seeped out, smelling like earth and rot roots, thick and writhing, burst from the cracks and wrapped around my ankles. I tried to scream, but my voice was swallowed. The mirror's surface stretched and pulled like a living mouth, opening wider and wider. I was dragged toward it, into the darkness beyond the glass, inside. I was no longer in my apartment. I was beneath the red tree. Only the forest was upside down. Roots hung from the sky, dripping black sap. The earth pulsed with life and death intertwined. Voices surrounded. Me, Ethan's voice, Amanda's voice, my own voice. They spoke together, chanting the words. I'd said, "We are not what dies." I realized then the truth I'd been running from. We weren't victims. We were participants. We had made the promise. We had opened the door, and now the root was inside me. As I stood there in the twisted forest beneath the mirror, I felt the pull of the root stronger than ever. It wanted to grow, to spread, to reach others, to make new promises. I tried to fight, but it was too late. The root entwined itself deeper. My reflection appeared beside me, not just a mirror image, but a separate entity. It smiled and whispered, "Tell them the story." I woke back in my apartment, roots still wrapped around my ankles. The mirror cracked, deeper, but now I understood. This was my curse, my burden, my role, to be the root's voice, to keep the promise alive. If you ever get a text at 2:03 a.m. or see the red tree in your dreams, remember this. The root waits, and it's always hungry. The roots were no longer just beneath me. They were inside me. Every breath I took felt thick with earth and decay. Every heartbeat echoed like the pounding of ancient drums since speaking the words. The mirror's cracked surface seemed to pulse. In time with my pulse, sometimes I'd catch glimpses, flickers in the glass of other faces, trapped beneath the roots, pleading, whispering, "Remember us. Feed the root." I tried to fight it. I moved out of my apartment, but no matter where I went, the mirror's reflection haunted me. My phone buzzed endlessly with unknown numbers. The texts kept coming. Say the words, keep the promise. One night, drawn by some terrible instinct, I returned to the woods. The red tree, it stood taller now, roots twisting like serpents across the ground. The soil was warm beneath my feet. I dug, and I found more than I expected. Bones not fresh, old, scattered, wrapped in roots among them. A necklace, one I recognized. Amanda's dot. The realization hit me like a blade. The root doesn't just consume memories, it consumes bodies. It grows stronger with every soul it takes, and it wants me next. I ran back to the apartment, but the mirror waited, its surface shattered, falling away like glass petals from the empty frame. Roots spilled out, black, wet, hungry. They wrapped around me, pulling me in as I struggled. My reflection appeared beside me, smiling wide and cold. "Tell them," it said, "the root must grow." I'm writing this now because I don't know how much longer I have. If you see the red tree, if you hear the whispers at 2:03 a.m. If your reflection smiles before you do, run, don't look back, because the root is waiting, and it always keeps its promises. The roots had taken over everything. My apartment, my body, my mind. Everywhere I looked, I saw them creeping across walls, wrapping around furniture, twisting through cracks in the floor. I was trapped, not just physically, but in the story itself, the promise, the root, the red tree. They were all one and the same. A curse passed down through whispered words and broken mirrors. I tried to fight, but the more I resisted, the stronger it grew. The reflection in the mirror wasn't me anymore. It was it, the voice that whispered. At 2:03 a.m., the thing beneath the soil. One final night, I stood before the mirror, my hands shaking, my breath ragged. I whispered the words again. We are not what dies. The glass rippled. The room dissolved. I was back beneath the red tree. Only this time, I wasn't alone. Figures emerged from the shadows. Ethan, Amanda, others whose names I didn't know. Their faces hollow, their eyes empty. They reached for me. The roots wrapped around us all, binding us in its endless cycle. I felt myself slipping, becoming part of it. A new root, a new voice. And then I woke up. Alone, the mirror cracked once more. But now it was silent. I don't know if I escaped, or if this is just another layer of the nightmare. But one thing is certain. The story isn't over. It never will be, because the root remembers, and it's still growing. If you hear a knock at 2:03 a.m., don't answer. If your reflection smiles before you do, don't look away. And if you find yourself drawn to a red tree in the woods, remember the promise, because some stories never end. This is my warning, not my story. Story 2, I need to get this off my chest before I start forgetting to. There used to be a town in the mountains of West Virginia, tucked into a hollow where the hills curved like a ribcage around a coal vein that fed the entire valley. I was born there, lived there for almost 17 years. It was called Darrington, population somewhere around 1,200 if you counted the outlying farms. Small enough to know everyone's name, big enough to have 2 gas stations, a diner, and a post office that closed at 5 sharp. But here's the thing. If you search for it now on a map, in county records, even in archived newsprint, it doesn't exist. Not that it's been renamed. Not that it was swallowed up by a neighboring town. I mean it doesn't exist. Like it never did. Like someone or something scrubbed it out of history with sandpaper and bleach. The weird part, nobody remembers it but me. I didn't start looking for Darrington again until I was in my late 20s. I moved out when I was 17 for college in North Carolina and just never looked back. Life happens like that. You think you'll go home for the summer, then maybe Thanksgiving. Then it's been 3 years and your phone contacts don't pick up anymore. People change numbers, parents downsize, old friends scatter like leaves. It's not weird until it is. I remember it hitting me on a Tuesday. I was on hold with a credit union, trying to update an old savings account from my teenage years. The woman asked me for the originating bank branch, and I said, "Oh, back home, the First County Credit in Darrington, West Virginia." Silence. She typed something, then again. "I'm sorry, sir. We don't have a record of a Darrington branch. Are you sure that's the correct town name?" I remember saying it slower, spelling it out, Derangton, like I was the one who was confused. She apologized again and suggested maybe it was another branch I meant. One in Denton, or Daring, or maybe Huntington. That night, I sat in bed scrolling through Google Maps on my phone. I zoomed into the same area where I knew Darrington should be, just west of Highway 19, past a horseshoe bend in the river, tucked near a break in the Appalachian ridgeline. But it wasn't there, not even in satellite view, just forest and hills. The closest town now is some place called Grey Hollow. I'd never heard of it before, and yet when I clicked on it, the map listed a diner, a post office, and 2 gas stations. One of them had the same layout as the old Sinclair my dad used to fill up at, but the name was different. The sign wasn't green with a dinosaur anymore, it was red, and the pumps were modern. I stared at the shape of the roads. The curvature was the same elbow turns in the highway, the same river bend. But none of the names were right. None of the businesses matched. The layout was there, but the soul of it wasn't. Like someone had skinned the place and stapled on a new face. I thought maybe I'd remembered it wrong, or maybe the town really had changed that much. But then I went looking for the name, Darrington. Nothing. Not in archived newspapers. Not in obituaries. Not in high school sports scores. Not even in public tax records. It's like it never existed. But I remember everything. I remember the smell of sulfur and pine. Sap after the rain when the mine vents would steam from underground. I remember Principal Hargrove's jowls shaking when he shouted at kids to get off the roof of the cafeteria. I remember the Darrington Creek Festival, where local weirdos would carve radishes instead of pumpkins because the mayor thought jack-o'-lanterns were too pagan. I remember my mom's coffee can full of buttons from the old sewing shop downtown. I remember the mural in the school hallway of coal miners shaking hands with doctors and teachers. Like that was the town's holy vision of success, digging your way out and handing the future off to someone cleaner. That kind of stuff doesn't just come from a dream. I remember the names, too. Not just my own family. The Feldmans, who ran the funeral parlor. The Hutch siblings, who all had the same crooked teeth. Miss Keeley, the Sunday school teacher, who had a glass eye and pretended to read your sins through it. Johnny Delancey, who broke both legs falling out of the church bell tower in 7th grade and kept walking weird after that. These were real people. They were my life. I went digging through old storage bins at my place. I figured, surely I had something. An old piece of mail, a report card, a photo, anything that said Darrington. But there was nothing. No addresses, no postmarks, nothing. In my own handwriting that included the town's name, but then buried in an envelope of old birthday cards and loose keys. I found it, a single Polaroid. It was faded and dog-eared at the corners, but the image was unmistakable. Me, about 9 or 10, standing next to an old metal sign that read, "Welcome to Darrington, built on blood, forged in fire." I didn't understand that motto as a kid. I thought it was badass. Now, reading it again as an adult, it just made my stomach twist. I flipped the photo over. Someone had scribbled on the back in Sharpie, "Don't come back." That's when I realized something was very wrong. That town existed. I lived there, I breathed there, I bled there, and now it's gone. Not bulldozed, not renamed, erased. And the more I dig, the more I realize I'm not supposed to remember it. But I do, God. Help me, I do. I couldn't stop thinking about that Polaroid. I stared at it so long that my eyes started tricking me. Like the image was subtly shifting, the background warping just out of frame. There was something behind the welcome sign, just out of view, a sloping hill maybe, a tree line. I couldn't remember. I used to pass that sign every day on the school bus. and yet the memory of what lay beyond it felt like trying to recall the face of a dream after waking. That night, I stayed up until 4 a.m. researching. Not just casual searching. I'm talking deep diving, state archives, geocache forums, Reddit threads with 10 views and 10 years of dust on them. I typed Darrington into everything. LexisNexis, Ancestry.com, Archive.org, public land records, even Facebook groups. For lost towns and regional histories. Nothing. Every hit I got was either a dead link, a 404 error, or a redirect to somewhere else entirely. A few pages mentioned the word Darrington, but it was always the name of a person or a street in England. Never a town. Never West Virginia. I even checked the United States Geological Survey site, which has an indexed database of every recognized place name, past and present. You'd be surprised how many ghost towns are still listed. Darrington wasn't one of them. It was like someone went through and wiped every trace of it out of the infrastructure. Not just shut the town down, but pulled it up by the roots and burned the stump. And that's when things got weird. I went back to Google Maps. I'd already checked the area where the town used to be. Nothing but a blur of forest, a few farm roads, some creeks. But this time I opened satellite view, zoomed in real slow. That's when I saw it, just east of the Cheat River. In a break between two ridges, there was a faint grid. Roads, faint like old scars on skin, like something paved over with dirt. And time, they didn't show up as labeled streets, just slightly discolored lines in the trees. One looped in a square shape, maybe an old subdivision. Another curved like a crescent and stopped abruptly. A Y intersection where no road should be. I started shaking, because I knew that shape, that crescent. That was Hillview Drive, my old street, and that Y-split. That was the corner by Milner's Deli, where kids used to buy candy cigarettes and warm orange sodas. It was there, just buried. I tried to zoom further, but the image resolution dropped off, blurry, like someone had smudged the pixels. I took a screenshot, uploaded it into an image enhancer I use for work. I cranked the contrast, brought out the elevation detail, and froze. There were foundations, faint rectangles hidden under the trees, like skeletons of buildings. You could just make out their shapes. An L-shaped structure that looked like the elementary school. A square with a round shadow beside it. Probably the old church and its bell tower. They were still there, rotting under the forest. I went back to Google and searched old mining towns in northern West Virginia and started scanning every name listed. Over 1,100 were mentioned in various articles and books, but none of them were Darrington. I even tried checking local newspapers. Nothing in the Charleston Gazette, nothing in the Morgantown Tribune, not even in the obituaries. I searched for family members who'd died while I still lived in Darrington. My Uncle Jimmy in '97, Mrs. Levin from across the street in 2001. Neither of them turned up, not even death records. It was like they never existed at this point. I was spiraling. I checked Zillow, realtor sites, parcel maps. I even went on TikTok and searched for any location-tagged videos in that region. It was a forested dead zone. No listings, no tags, no photos, and then my internet cut out, just like that. Router lights went dead. My phone dropped to no signal. I figured it was a glitch until I noticed something else every time. I typed Darrington into a search bar. It lagged hard. The whole page would stutter and freeze. No other word did that, just Darrington. So I tried an experiment. I opened a VPN, routed my signal through another country, typed Darrington WV again. Still nothing, but this time I noticed a flicker in the top left corner of the browser window. For a single second, a tab auto-opened and auto-closed. I wasn't fast enough to see what it was. Then, at 2:43 a.m., I got an email, no subject, no sender, no return address, no header metadata, just a blank white email body with 3 words typed in the center. Stop digging now. I froze. Hands on the keyboard, heart slamming. I didn't know if it was a prank, malware, a warning, but something about it felt impossibly old. Like the digital equivalent of finding a handwritten letter from someone who died 50 years ago. I tried to reply, but the email bounced. I copied the message source code, but it was gibberish. Base 64 fragments, all zeros. Like the thing had come from nowhere. I looked at the time again. Still 2:43 a.m. My power flickered. I'm not making this up, I swear to you. The lights dimmed for maybe 3 seconds, then returned. But in those 3 seconds, my computer tower let out a soft click, like a switch being thrown. My monitor turned black dot when it came back on. My desktop wallpaper had changed. It wasn't the photo I had of me and my girlfriend at the lake. It was a blurry black and white image of a dirt road, trees on either side leading into shadow. I didn't recognize the picture, but in the lower right corner, barely visible, was a rusted metal sign. Darrington welcomes you. I couldn't breathe. I hadn't touched the wallpaper settings in over a year. Then came the sound, faint at first, like static, then clearer, the soft creak of a swing set, and something breathing, wet and slow, not over speakers. I swear to God, it was coming from behind the monitor, like something inside the machine. I yanked the power cord out. Everything went silent. That was last night. Right now, I'm sitting in my living room, every light on, laptop on battery only, typing this into an offline file. I know how all this sounds, but I have to figure this out. I have to know what happened to Darrington, why it disappeared, why no one remembers it, or why they're pretending they don't. Because someone, somewhere, does remember, and they really, really don't want me looking. After that night, I didn't sleep. I tried. I even laid in bed with the lights on, a hoodie pulled over my head like I used to do as a kid when thunderstorms hit. But every time I closed my eyes, I felt it. That same stillness I remembered from the woods around Darrington. That heavy, charged quiet, like the whole world was holding its breath, waiting. The next morning, I packed every old box, bin, and trunk I had into the living room. I'd lived in my apartment for almost 6 years, and I hadn't opened some of these boxes since I moved in. College notebooks, family photos, broken picture frames I never bothered to fix, old VHS tapes and cassettes in shoeboxes labeled in faded marker. If there was any proof that I'd lived in Darrington, something with the name, the zip code, a school emblem, I'd find it in here, or so I thought. I started with photos. My high school albums, birthday parties, holidays. The images were there. Me at 10 years old, in a backyard pool. Me holding up a carved radish with a big dumb grin. Me standing beside my dad at a 4th of July parade. But there was something wrong with all of them. Something subtle. No one else had a face at first. I thought the pictures had just aged poorly. Old film stock, moisture damage. But it wasn't that. My face was clear. My body, the scenery, but the other people, kids I knew, adults, neighbors, were all blurred or facing away. In one photo, there was a group of children around a birthday cake. I was smiling at the camera. The kid next to me had a party hat, and no features. Just a blank smear of flesh. I checked another album, same thing. My 8th grade graduation photo showed me in a makeshift cap and gown, holding a rolled-up certificate. The girl standing beside me had her eyes scratched out, not by me, not with a pen. The actual image had degraded only at her face, like time had eaten her first. That's when I started to feel sick. I grabbed the old camcorder tape labeled Christmas 2002, Grandpa's Story. I remembered this one. I was maybe 12, and my grandfather, always half drunk on holiday bourbon, had told some story about the mine collapse, saying it wasn't really a collapse at all. He'd said the men unsealed something, and that's why they never recovered any bodies. I remember him chuckling to himself and saying, "The mountain don't like to be disturbed." I popped the cassette into an old combo player and hit play. At first, just static. Then the grainy image of my family's living room appeared, Christmas tree twinkling, kids shouting, wrapping paper flying. There was my grandpa in his armchair, laughing. I could hear my own voice off camera asking, "Tell the story about the mine, Grandpa." But when he opened his mouth to speak, the tape warped. It didn't just glitch, it groaned. A deep, low-frequency vibration came from the speakers, like tectonic plates grinding together. The whole screen twisted sideways, and when it snapped back, the image had changed. The living room was empty, lights off, tree gone, just Grandpa's chair sitting there, rocking slowly on its own. Then the screen went black. I rewound the tape and tried again. This time, the whole thing played through like nothing was wrong, but Grandpa's voice was replaced with a looped audio clip of wind, just wind, blowing through what sounded like a cavern. That's when I really started to panic. I dumped out my memory box, the one I was sure held my elementary report cards, art projects, that one award I got in second grade 4, best penmanship or whatever. All of it was there, my name on it, my handwriting, but not one single mention of Darrington. No school letterhead, no addresses, just Mr. Wheeler's class written in crayon, or fall festival with no location. It was like every trace of the town had been deliberately removed, but only from the edges. Like someone had taken a scalpel to the paper and surgically erased anything that tied me to a physical place. I checked the spines of my childhood books. You know, the little library stickers, they used to say, property of town name, elementary. They were all peeled off, and not recently. The glue residue had aged, like it had been gone for years. It got worse. I found a sealed envelope addressed to me in my mum's handwriting. Postmarked 2008, the year after I moved away. The return address was blank, but I recognized the style. Cursive, all caps, with little hearts over every I. Inside the envelope was a single folded piece of paper. You don't remember what you left behind. That's the only reason you're still alive. No signature, no punctuation. Just that sentence, written in ballpoint pen. There was something smudged on the corner of the page, red but too dark to be ink. I tried calling my mum after that. I needed to hear her voice. I needed her to tell me I wasn't losing it, that Darrington was real, that we'd lived there. That my childhood wasn't just some elaborate hallucination. She picked up on the second ring. "Hi, sweetie," she said cheerfully. "Everything okay?" Yeah, kind of. Listen, Mum, do you remember where I grew up? She laughed lightly. What do you mean? I mean, the town. Where we lived. What was it called? There was a pause. She exhaled. Honey, you know this. We lived in another pause. Longer. Henderson, I think. Somewhere near Clarksburg. I felt cold. No, it was called Darrington, West Virginia. She went silent. I remember the street, I said. Hillview Drive. You worked part-time at the general store next to the laundromat. Dad coached the junior league basketball team. The mine collapsed in 2003, and I don't think we should talk about this, she cut in. Her voice had changed. Tighter, tense. What do you mean? You really don't remember, Darrington? I think you're just tired. Maybe you need to talk to someone. It's been a stressful year. Sometimes we imagine things. I laughed not because it was funny, but because it was so unbelievably insane to hear my own mother gaslighting me like that. Mum, I have a picture of the Darrington town sign. I have recordings. I remember the Radish Festival. I remember the swings behind the school. She went quiet again. Then she said something I'll never forget. We told them you were too young, that you wouldn't remember. That's why they let you go. Clicked dot, she hung up. I sat there for a long time, just staring at my phone, not really processing. My ears rang. My vision blurred at the edges. The room felt wrong, like it was shrinking, pressing inward. They let you go. That's what she said. Let me go from what? Let me go why? I looked back at the envelope. The warning, the erased photos, the distorted audio, and a thought hit me so hard it nearly made me gag. What if I wasn't meant to remember Darrington? What if it was never supposed to be remembered at all? And what if remembering is exactly what it wants? There was one last place I hadn't checked. Reddit. I hadn't wanted to go there, honestly. It felt like grasping at straws. The land of tinfoil hats and creepypasta roleplayers who live to manufacture weird stories for karma points. But I was desperate, and I figured if there was even a 1% chance someone else remembered Darrington, I had to take it. I searched the term, in quotes, Darrington, West Virginia. Filters, oldest first, all subreddits, no keyword exclusions. That's when I found it. A single thread, created 6 years ago, posted to a dead sub called Our Lost Hounds. The title was, Anyone remember a place called Darrington, WV? Or, Am I going crazy? I clicked it so fast I accidentally reported it for spam. There were only 3 comments. One said, Never heard of it. Maybe you mean daring. Another was a bot correcting spelling. But the third stopped me cold. Yes, I remember. Hillview Drive. Yellow-coated man by the clock tower. You're not crazy, but you need to stop asking about it. You relict breathy clicked the username. Account suspended, but they had one post history left, cached in a comment scraper. A thread from R, glitch in the matrix, where someone had posted about a dream bleeding into their real life. Relic Breath had replied with a throwaway email address, rel1cbreath.1992@protonmail.com. I copied it down and stared at it for a long time. I had no idea what I was about to walk into. This could have been a hoax, a trap, another layer of hallucination, but I emailed them anyway. Just a simple message. Subject, Darrington. I think I'm like you. I remember it. I grew up there. Hillview Drive, the creek behind the baseball field, the Radish Festival. I'm not supposed to remember, I know that now. But I do. Please tell me I'm not the only one. I hit send, sat back, started pacing my apartment like an animal. Every passing minute felt longer than the last. 10 minutes passed, 20.40.40. Then finally a reply dot. No greeting, no pleasantries, just this, meet me in person, no more digital. They watch that. I'll explain everything. Park and ride off I-71, outside Columbus. Friday, 4 p.m. Come alone. Refroze. This was it. This was my shot. I requested time off work, booked a rental car, didn't tell anyone, not even my girlfriend. I didn't want her to worry, or worse, talk me out of it, because deep down, I knew what I was doing wasn't safe, but it also wasn't optional. The drive to Ohio was a blur of overcast skies and static-filled radio. Every station fizzled out somewhere around the West Virginia border. My GPS acted up again when I passed Elkins, froze for a solid 5 minutes, then glitched out entirely near a rural detour. I followed printed directions after that, which felt appropriately analog. When I pulled into the park and ride, she was already there. She, not what I expected. The username Relic Breath had given me the impression of some grizzled man in a basement. But this was a woman in her 30s, maybe early 40s, pale, with black hair in a loose braid, standing beside a beat-up Subaru. She looked at me like she already knew me. "You're late," she said, "by about 17 years." I didn't know what to say. I stammered something like, "You're Ria." She nodded once. "You remember the bell tower?" Of course, what was nailed to it the day the mine collapsed. That stopped me. It was a test, a memory test. I dug deep. I remembered the chaos, the smell of smoke, and then the image hit me like a freight train. A deer head, I said, upside down, skinned. Her face didn't change, but she nodded again. "Okay," she said, "then we don't have much time." She motioned for me to follow her into her car. I hesitated. I mean, obviously. This was Stranger Danger 101. But something in her voice, something in her eyes, told me this wasn't a trap. If anything, she was more scared than I was. Inside her car was a mess of papers, photos, tape recorders. She handed me a manila folder. Inside were maps, hand-drawn overlays of the Darrington layout on top of current satellite prints. Highlighted notes, annotations. "You're the 5th one to reach out," she said, starting the car. "Only the 2nd to make it this far. What happened to the others? Dead or disappeared? Or they stopped remembering? It gets them. Eventually, the forgetting. Unless it already marked you, then forgetting won't save you." I didn't know what to say. I just stared at the maps, at the annotations that matched everything I had just barely managed to dig up. "I thought I was going insane," I said. She nodded slowly. "You're not, but it's going to feel that way soon." We drove to a quiet diner nearby, sat in a booth by the window. She kept scanning the street as we talked, like she expected someone to show up at any minute. And then she told me the truth, or her truth. She grew up in Darrington, too, lived on the other side of town, on Palmer Street. Her dad worked for mine. She was 12 when it collapsed. She said there was a rumor, not just that the mine caved in, but that it opened into something that wasn't supposed to be there, something that had always been there, waiting. She said the town made a deal. "You ever notice how Darrington never got hit like the other coal towns?" she asked. "Never had the poverty, never had the layoffs. Everyone had food, The roads were clean. We thought we were just lucky. But we weren't. We were feeding it. Feeding what? She stared at me. We don't say its name. That's part of the pact. I sat in silence, trying to absorb what I was hearing. We gave it people. She whispered, once every few years. Someone would disappear. Sometimes a kid. Sometimes a drifter. Sometimes an entire family. The town would pretend it was a tragedy. Missing person, flyers, tears, fake funerals. But behind closed doors, they knew. I felt my skin crawl. You're saying we were a sacrifice town? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. She reached into her coat and pulled out a torn page from a notebook. It looked like a child had written it. The handwriting was jagged, frantic. I saw them take him. They put the mask on. They made me watch. I don't want to remember. I don't want to go next. On the bottom of the page was a name. Ethan R. I knew that name. He was in my 2nd grade. Class. He vanished in 2002. Ria leaned forward. They've tried to erase all of us. The ones who remember. The ones who slipped through. They'll come for you now, too. But that's how you know it's real. What do? I asked. Her eyes met mine. You remember? I didn't go home after the diner. I couldn't. Ria warned me not to, said if I went back to my apartment, if I slept in my bed, if I turned my phone back on and acted like things were normal, I'd lose it all. Not just the memories, the thread, the connection, the part of my mind still tied to the town. She said, that's how it starts. They pull the memories out, little by little, until you wake up one day and your own name doesn't sound right anymore. So I did something reckless. I drove straight to where Derrington used to be. No plan, no food, no backup, just adrenaline, caffeine, and a growing sense that I was running out of time. I didn't even tell Ria. She'd told me to wait, said. She had more to show me, but I was too far gone by then. I needed to see it. I needed to touch it. To prove to myself that it wasn't just a shared delusion. It was around 2 a.m. when I turned off the main road and took the old gravel path that used to be Hillview Drive. My headlights barely cut through the mist. Trees leaned in overhead like a tunnel, branches clawing at the roof of the car. Every 100 feet or so, the road narrowed, overgrown with weeds and thorn bushes, like the forest was trying to swallow the way back in. I should have turned around, but I didn't. At mile marker 7, the road split, just like it used to. A Y-shaped fork, with one side leading toward what had been Main Street and the other winding down to the school and the baseball field. Except there were no street signs anymore, no asphalt, no gravel, just faint indentations in the soil, like an animal trail, like something used to pass through here, but not anymore. I parked the car and got out. It was dead silent, no wind, no bugs, no birds, just that oppressive quiet, like the world was holding something in its mouth. I walked for maybe a mile. That's when I started to see them. The remnants, a fire hydrant, rusted and leaning sideways, barely visible under ivy, a sidewalk, slab cracked in half, leading nowhere, a stop sign on the ground, half buried in moss, its paint faded like old blood. Then, around the bend I saw it, the swing. It hung from an old oak tree behind what used to be the school, or where the school should have been. The seat was rotten, the chains rusted, but it was there, still intact, and it was moving, just slightly, back and forth, swaying in the dead air. I stared at it, heart pounding. expecting to see someone, a child maybe, or a shape in the shadows. But there was nothing, just the creak of the chain, like a pendulum counting down. I don't know what possessed me to sit on it, but I did. And the moment I did, something clicked, not literally, in my head. A door opened, memories hit me like a flood. Not just scenes, feelings, sounds, smells, 1,000 tiny details that had been sealed away in some buried corner of my brain. The way the school hallway always smelled like wet pencils, the low hum of fluorescent lights, the broken tile in the boys' bathroom where kids used to hide cigarettes, Miss Clary's laugh, the way she used to hum hymns when she graded papers, how she vanished one day in the middle of the semester and was never mentioned again. It all came back, and with it came the fear, because those weren't just memories, they were warnings. I stood up and stumbled back toward the overgrown street, breath ragged. That's when I saw the chimney, just the chimney. Nothing else the house it belonged to was gone, rotted, collapsed, consumed. But the chimney stood tall, alone in a field like a gravestone. I walked up to it, pulled out my phone to take a picture, but the screen stayed black. Dead battery. No, the phone was on. I could feel it vibrating, but the camera wouldn't work. The compass app spun in circles. The flashlight flickered on and off by itself. And then I heard it coughing, borrow from behind the chimney. Low, ragged, wet. I froze. There was no wind, no houses, no people, just me, the trees, the chimney, and that coughing. It lasted 5 seconds, then silence. I didn't check it. I couldn't. Every hair on my body told me if I looked around that chimney, if I saw whatever made that sound, something would break in me. So I ran. I didn't look back. I ran through the weeds, through the broken sidewalk, past the swing, back toward the car. But I stopped just before I reached the tree line, because I saw footprints in the mud, barefoot, human, leading away from the forest, toward where the church used to be, and next to them, mine, fresh, like someone had been walking beside me the entire time. I got in the car and locked the doors, but I didn't drive off, because the rearview mirror was fogged up from the inside, and there, drawn into the condensation, were 5 letters, DERR, to wiped the mirror. There was nothing behind me, nothing I could see, but something had been there. I slammed the car into reverse, turned around and tore out of that place like a bat out of hell. I didn't stop until I hit the state line. Even now, writing this, I'm not sure I ever left. Not really, because when I got home, after hours of driving, every nerve on fire, I opened my apartment door and found a drawing on the floor. A child's drawing, crayon on yellow construction paper. It showed a man in a red hoodie, me standing in front of a swing set. Behind me was a shadow with long fingers and no face, and below it, in scrawled handwriting, "You came back. Now we remember you too." I didn't sleep that night either. The child's drawing sat on my kitchen counter like a ticking bomb. I didn't touch it. I didn't even breathe near it. I just sat there and stared at it. The red hoodie, the swing set, the faceless thing. Behind me, it wasn't just a creepy picture. It was personal, drawn with uncanny accuracy, like whoever made it had followed me, knew what I wore, knew where I stood, knew what was behind me even when I didn't. And there was something else, the handwriting, those jagged off-kilter letters. They weren't unfamiliar. They felt buried deep in my memory. Not quite recognizable, but familiar. like a childhood song you haven't heard in 20 years that somehow brings tears to your eyes. That's when I started thinking about him. The postman from Derrington, the man in the yellow coat. If you grew up in town, you knew him. You couldn't avoid him. Every kid in Derrington talked about him like he was an urban legend, whispered his name like a ghost story. He never gave us his first name. No one ever asked. He was just the mailman, and he never seemed to age, tall, always smiling too wide. A mustard-colored raincoat, even on clear days. He had this uncanny knack for showing up at odd hours, dusk, usually, never morning. Always just as the streetlights flickered on, walking up the sidewalk with a worn brown satchel swinging from his shoulder, humming that same off-key song under his breath. But here's the thing that always chilled me. Even as a kid, I don't think he ever brought mail. I mean it. I can't remember a single time he actually left anything. No letters, no bills, no packages. He just walked the route, stared into windows, nodded at you as he passed by, and God help you if you waved at him, because if you did, he'd stop and smile and reach into his satchel and pull out an envelope, unmarked, sealed, yellowed like parchment. I waved once, when I was maybe 8. I got a letter. I don't remember what was in it. Or maybe I do, and something inside me has kept it locked away. But I remember how I felt when I opened it. Like I'd done something permanent. Like something knew me now. I asked my mum about him the next day. The postman, the yellow coat, the letter. She told me, dead serious, we don't talk about him. I laughed, thought she was messing with me. She wasn't. I still remember how she sat me down, hands trembling, and said, "If he gives you anything again, you don't read it. You bring it to me. You burn it, understand?" I nodded, but it was too late, because that night I had my first dream about the cornfield, about the door beneath the earth, about the thing waiting behind it. Now, decades later, with this crayon drawing on my kitchen counter, I felt that same ice-cold fear leaking back into my chest, because in the bottom corner of the page, drawn so faintly I'd missed it at first, was a small figure in yellow dot hat, long coat, long-reaching arms, and that smile, that impossible smile. I didn't even remember seeing him yesterday, but maybe I didn't need to. Maybe he saw me. I needed to know more. I went digging through my storage again, not for photos this time, but for journals. I used to scribble notes as a kid, stupid things, lists of things I hated, names of kids I had crushes on, but buried in one tattered Mead notebook, written in shaky 4th grade handwriting, was this: "He knocked on our window last night." Mum didn't hear it, but I did. I hid under the bed. He put something in my backpack. "Don't open it. Don't read it." He said if I read it, I'd go away like Ethan. I don't want to go away. My hands started shaking. I flipped the page. There was a drawing, another crude child sketch, this one of a boy, me, with a yellow envelope floating above his head, like a noose. Below him was a hole in the ground with arms reaching up. I couldn't breathe. I threw the notebook down and went outside just to clear my head. Maybe scream into the wind. The sun was starting to rise, birds chirping like everything was normal. But I knew it wasn't. I felt it. I checked my mailbox on a whim. Something compelled me. And inside, sitting alone in the rusted metal box, was an envelope, no stamp, no return address, just aged yellowing paper and a wax seal. I stood there, frozen, afraid to touch it. Neighbors drove by. Sprinklers kicked on. The world went on like nothing was wrong, like this wasn't the worst moment of my life. Finally, I grabbed it, took it inside, laid it on the counter beside the child's drawing. I didn't want to open it. I really didn't. But I did. Inside was a single photograph. It showed me standing at the swing set behind Darrington Elementary. Same red hoodie, same pose. But I wasn't alone in this photo. Behind me, closer this time, was the man in the yellow coat, smiling, staring, and on the back of the photo, scrawled in perfect block print, "You waved again." I didn't sleep. Again, the yellow envelope sat on the counter like a live grenade. I'd opened it. I'd seen the photo. I'd acknowledged it. That was the mistake. I should have burned it. I should have run. But instead, I sat there all night, in a kind of trance, staring at the picture, at the way the man in the yellow coat stood so close behind me. I hadn't seen him. I swear on everything, I never saw him that day in the woods. But the photo said otherwise. And worse, the photo had angle, framing, which meant someone, or something, had taken it. And if that weren't enough to crush my chest with dread, the envelope smelled like Darrington. I don't know how to explain that. Not in a way that makes sense. It was that faint, musty smell of a closed church basement, of old coal dust soaked into wool, of fog sitting too long on corn husks, of mildew and melted vinyl and childhood. Fear, I couldn't throw it away. Every time I got near the trash can, I felt watched. I didn't eat. I didn't shower. I didn't go to work. That day, I got 3 more letters. Each one arrived at a different time. No delivery truck. No sound. I'd just find them. One stuffed in the door jamb. One on the windshield of my car. One on the doormat, like it had been hand-placed with careful intent. No names. No addresses, but the seals were all the same. Cracked, dark red wax with a symbol I recognized now. A downward pointing triangle, 3 dots around it. I'd seen it carved into the wooden swing at Darrington Elementary. The first letter wasn't even a letter. It was a child's report card. Mine, from 2nd grade. But the grades weren't subjects, they were behaviors. Remembering, obedience, silence. I had an A in silence, a D in remembering. The second was a torn page from a diary, written in adult handwriting I didn't recognize. The ink was smeared in places, burnt on the edges. The entry read, "It started when the sun stopped touching the church roof. That's when the shadows came faster. That's when they picked. Frankie, he knew, and they smelled it on him. Knowledge is a scent to them. They drink it like blood." I told him to act dumb, act forgetful. He laughed. He didn't laugh long. No name, no date. Just that one paragraph. The third envelope contained an audio cassette. A real one, like from the 90s. No label. No writing. I don't even own a tape player anymore, but I managed to dig my old Walkman out of the closet and slap in some half-dead. Batteries. I pressed play at first. Just static. Then the sound of breathing, heavy, labored, panicked. Then a voice, male, trembling, familiar. If you're hearing this, it means you got one too. The envelope, the letter, the look, you know. What I mean, you're marked now. You're part of it. They don't kill you, not right away. They erase you, bit by bit, thought by thought. The postman, he's not the worst. He's the messenger. It's the thing beneath him you need to worry about. It speaks in subtraction. It doesn't scream, it unremembers, like a vacuum. pause, coughing. My name was Mark Ellison. I lived at 104 Milner Street. I was the mayor's assistant. I knew the truth, the deal they made, the shape they fed. I kept records. But the more I wrote, the more I forgot why I was writing. Another pause, a wet noise, shuffling. If you still see yourself in mirrors, you have time. If your reflection ever smiles first, run or burn it. Burn everything. Then silence, just breathing, and finally a whisper. Don't go near the corn. Not in July, not again. It remembers you. Click. I nearly threw the Walkman across the room. Mark Ellison. I knew that name. He used to speak at school assemblies. Tall guy. Always wore a bolo tie. Had a voice like gravel soaked in molasses. I remembered him warning us once about fireworks before the 4th of July, said, "You don't want to lose fingers before you're old enough to sign a contract with your blood." We all laughed. Now I knew he hadn't been joking. I found myself pacing in circles. My brain felt splintered. Part of me panicked, rationalizing, demanding I throw everything away and check into a hospital, while the other part wanted to know more. So I called Ria. She picked up immediately. "No, hello. Just, what did they send you?" I told her. She didn't speak for a long time. Then, "They're accelerating it." "What does that mean?" "You remembered too fast. That draws them. They don't like speed. They want it slow. Controlled. A leak, not a flood. You broke the seal, the boundary, the pact, the memory membrane." She sounded like she hadn't slept in years. "You said others reached out to you," I said. "What happened to them?" 3 disappeared. 1 forgot everything. Woke up with a new name in his driver's license and a lease for an apartment. He didn't remember signing. Swears he was born in Indiana. I showed him pictures, photos of him as a kid with the Darrington mascot, standing under the clock tower. He thought they were fake, said I was stalking him, and the others. One's dead. How? They found him in a cornfield 3 states away. No ID, no clothes. Skin completely smooth. No fingerprints, no body hair. Like someone reset him. My mouth went dry. "Why cornfields?" I asked. "Why always the corn?" She paused. Then she said something I'll never forget. "Because it doesn't grow, it listens." I hung up. I didn't sleep that night either, but I did dream, not of monsters or shadows or haunted towns. I dreamed of a mail slot in a blank door, and behind that door, breathing, slow, rhythmic, the sound of something waiting to be remembered. And when I woke up, there was another envelope. Under my pillow, I live alone. The envelope under my pillow was smaller than the others, cream-colored, soft to the touch. No seal this time, just a faint stain in the corner, like someone had pressed their thumb into it while bleeding. I stared at it for a long time before I opened it. Something about this one felt final, like the others had been threats or warnings, but this was something else. An invitation. Inside was a single card, handwritten, calligraphy style, like an old wedding invitation or church bulletin. "You've been selected." That's all it said on the front. On the back, in finer, shakier script, "Welcome back to Darrington, Hillview Drive, dusk, July 13th, no year, no explanation." I checked the calendar. July 13th was 2 days away. I don't know how long I sat there. Probably hours. The clock changed. The light outside shifted, but I didn't move. That phrase, "you've been selected," looped over and over in my mind like a curse. I couldn't shake. It sounded like something a cult would send, or something older. I don't remember deciding to pack, but I must have, because the next morning, there was a duffel bag by my door. Flashlight, camera, recorder, gas can, printed maps, lighter batteries, chalk, a compass, rope, salt. I don't remember choosing any of it, but I packed like I was going into a war zone, like something in me already knew what kind of place I'd be walking into. I called Ria one last time, told her about the invitation. "You shouldn't go," she said, her voice flat. "You're not ready. I don't care. You should. Once you step back onto Hillview, you can't leave again. Not really. Not unless it lets you. Then, I guess I'll find out." She was quiet for a long time. "Then, there's something I didn't tell you." I waited. "You remember the church?" she asked. "The white one with the green roof?" "Yeah, don't go inside it. Even if it looks empty. Even if you hear someone you know." "Why?" She didn't answer at first then. Just before hanging up, she whispered, "Because it's not a church anymore. It's a mouth now." Click. The drive back to the Darrington site felt different this time. The roads were emptier, the air heavier. I passed more than one car, abandoned on the shoulder, doors open, headlights still faintly glowing, even in daylight. Something was shifting by the time I reached the perimeter, where the old Hillview Drive used to begin. The sun had already started to set. Dusk, just like the letter had said. I parked the car by the tree line and stared at the overgrown road ahead. The grass was taller now, the trees denser. It had only been a few days, but nature had moved fast, like something wanted the way closed. But I walked forward anyway. As I crossed what used to be the town line, something shifted in the air. My ears popped. The wind stopped. Even the bugs went quiet. The silence was almost sacred. I followed what was left of Hillview Drive, the cracked sidewalk, the toppled street lamps, the swing set still hanging by one chain. It all looked thinner, like a memory that had been replayed too many times. Grainy, paper-like, fragile. Then I saw it. The sign, the old "Welcome to Darrington" sign. Wood, hand-painted, nailed to a leaning post. I hadn't seen that sign in decades. Thought it was long gone, but there it was, plain as day, except someone had changed it. The word Darrington was crossed out, and in its place, carved deep into the wood, was a single word, REMMBR. That's when I realized what this place really was. It wasn't just abandoned, it wasn't just erased, it was waiting. I moved forward slowly, every step echoing in my chest. Every corner of my mind told me to stop, that crossing into the center of town would mean crossing a point of no return. But I couldn't stop. I was already too deep. I passed the collapsed diner, the overgrown baseball field, the hollow shell of what used to be the general store. Everything had decayed in unnatural ways. Wooden walls turned inward like dried husks. Metal fixtures rusted in twisting, spiraling patterns. Time hadn't just passed here, it had fed here. The deeper I went, the more wrong it felt. And then I saw the people. Not many, maybe 4 or 5. Just silhouettes at first, standing still in doorways or behind windows that no longer had glass, watching. Silent, not moving. I didn't call out to them. I don't know why. Instinct, maybe. Something primal, I knew, without being told that they weren't quite human anymore. Not fully, not after being here this long, and maybe they never had been. As I reached the town square, I noticed something bizarre. No birds, no bugs, no leaves. The trees around the square were bare, just branches stretching up like twisted fingers. Despite it being July, the fountain in the center was dry, cracked, black with rot, and in the middle of the square, there stood a mailbox, bright, red dot, pristine. The flag was up. I walked toward it slowly, every step heavier than the last. The air got thick, syrupy, like I was pushing through something invisible. The smell hit me halfway there, sulfur, mildew, rusted copper, and then I saw it, an envelope sticking out of the box stopped my name written. On it in looping, childlike cursive. I took it out with shaking hands, opened it. Inside was a single page, no threats, no riddles, just this: welcome back, we've saved your place. The Darrington Memory Parish. I looked up. The sky had changed, the sun was gone, and the church bell was ringing, not loud, not fast, but slow, deliberate, calling me. And then I heard footsteps behind me, soft, squishing in the dirt. I turned around. It was the man in the yellow coat, closer than he'd ever been. Face still shadowed beneath the brim of his cap, grinning, holding. His sat CHEL. He extended it to me. Didn't speak, didn't move, just waited. I reached inside, pulled out one last envelope. No name, no writing. I opened it. Inside was a photograph. It showed me standing in the town square, alone, except in the background, lining the rooftops, behind the bell tower. In the windows were hundreds of faces, staring, and all of them were smiling. I didn't want to go in. Every cell in my body screamed, don't step closer. Don't touch the door. Don't even look at it too long. But it was calling me. The church at the end of Maple Street. White, clapboard walls, warped by time. Shingles curled like dead petals. Green steeple leaning slightly east. That familiar weather vane, the rooster still perched atop the cross, spinning in a wind that didn't exist. Except this wasn't the church I remembered. Not really. The closer I got, the more wrong it looked. Subtle things at first, the way the paint shifted shades when I blinked. The stained glass windows now bore no saints or angels, just spiraling, jagged shapes, like someone tried to depict something that wasn't meant to be seen. And the door. Oh God, the door, it had no handle, just a black hole where the knob should have been, as if the wood had recoiled from ever being touched. I stood at the foot of the steps, staring up, heart pounding so hard I felt it in my throat. Ria's voice echoed in my head. Don't go inside, even if it looks empty. Even if you hear someone you know, it's not a church anymore. It's a mouth now. But I was already in the mouth. The whole town was a throat, the square, a tongue, the houses, teeth. And I was already halfway swallowed, so I climbed the stairs. Each step groaned under my weight, like the wood remembered me. The front door opened without a touch, slowly, reluctantly, as if whatever waited inside had just woken up. Was dark, not pitch black. Worse, it was the kind of dark that moves when you're not looking, that breathes. I stepped inside. The temperature dropped immediately from muggy July to frozen basement chill. My breath fogged in front of me, and the smell, old iron, candle wax, something sweet rotting under it all. It wasn't decay. It was nostalgia spoiled. Like someone left a box of childhood memories in the crawl space until they turned moldy and wrong. I turned on my flashlight. The beam barely cut through the gloom. The pews were still there, mostly intact, though warped and damp. I could see faint stains on the floor, long rusty streaks that weren't there before. And the altar, that's where everything changed. It used to be simple: cross, flowers, hymn board. Now it was a hole. A wide black chasm had opened where the altar had been, perfectly round, surrounded by salt that had been disturbed in places. The floor around it was covered in carvings, not in wood, in flesh, skin, strips of it, some of it still moist. I knelt without meaning to, like something in me remembered what this place was now. It wasn't a sanctuary, it was a trapdoor, and someone or something had opened it from beneath. That's when I heard the voices. At first, they were faint, far off, but growing. Children laughing, a hymn hummed off-key. My mother's voice, whispering my full name like she used to when I was in trouble. Then a teacher, then a classmate, then a voice I hadn't heard in 20 years, saying, come back, we remember you. Don't you remember us?" I turned to run, but the church had changed. The doors were gone, the pews had moved, now arranged in a perfect spiral leading into the hole. The stained glass windows glowed with no source. The shapes in them writhed, no longer bound by glass or meaning. The ceiling had lifted impossibly high, revealing a cathedral of darkness that stretched beyond logic, and all around me, the walls breathed. That's when I saw the figures. Not people, not really, just silhouettes pressed into the wood. Dozens of them, like shadows, burned into the grain, each one frozen mid-prayer, heads bowed, hands clasped. But their mouths had been carved open wide, wider than anatomy allowed, like something had pulled the scream out of them and left the shape behind. And one of them moved, just barely. Its eyes opened, it turned its head toward me and smiled. I don't remember running, only the feeling of the stairs cracking beneath me. The sound of breath, not mine, hot on the back of my neck as I stumbled through the frame of the front door, collapsing onto the grass. Outside, the sun was gone. The church bell was still ringing, but now it rang in reverse. I looked back once, just once, and the church was watching me, its windows pulsing like lungs, its steeple twitching toward me like a broken neck. The door had grown wider, hungrier, and something inside it was starting to climb up the spiral of pews. I fled into the woods. Branches slashed my arms, thorns ripped at my jacket. My flashlight flickered and died. But I didn't stop running, not until I saw the clock tower, still standing, still stuck at 3:17, and beneath it, someone waiting, Rhea pale, shaking, mud on her jeans, blood on her palms. She didn't speak, just handed me a small box, wrapped in cloth. Then she whispered, "This is how you leave, but only if it remembers you first." I opened the box. Inside was a folded piece of paper, my name in my own handwriting. Underneath it, one word, scrawled in a child's jagged letters, "Stay," and beneath that, a list with 5 names. 4 of them were already crossed out. I don't know how long I stared at the list. The names were scrawled in black ink, as if written by a child who didn't quite know how to control the pen. Uneven, shaky strokes that bent and bled across the page. But I recognized them, each. 1. Mark Ellison crossed out 2. Dana Wexler crossed out 3. Curtis Dilley crossed out 4. Rhea Marin crossed out 5. My name not crossed out. I didn't breathe for a full 30 seconds. Mark, the voice on the cassette tape, The one who warned me not to read anything, not to wave, not to look in mirrors. Crossed out. Dana, I hadn't heard that name since 3rd grade. She was in my class. Brown hair, missing front tooth, always had that weird fascination with worms. She disappeared on a field trip to White Hollow Creek in 4th grade. They said she drowned, but no body was ever found. Curtis Dilly, the high school janitor, friendly, always gave out double portions at lunch when the cafeteria ladies weren't. Looking, died in a house fire, or that's what they told us. Rhea. The only one I'd actually spoken to, the only one who tried to help. Now her name was crossed out. I looked up at her. She was still standing there at the edge of the towers. Shadow, pale, drawn. Her arms were wrapped tight around her chest, like she was holding something inside that wanted to crawl out. You gave me this, I said. You knew I didn't cross it out, she said. That's not how it works. Then, how does it work? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she turned her head toward the trees. We're not alone. The woods had gone silent again. That suffocating silence, too still, too wide. You could feel it closing in, like the trees were pressing inward, hungry to eavesdrop. I pocketed the list. Rhea took my arm and led me toward the base of the clock tower. We don't have much time, she said. Your name, it's the last one. You're the anchor now. Anchor, the tether, the link. The final weight keeping this place from sinking fully. That's why they need you to stay. She pulled open a rusted steel hatch behind the tower, something I'd never seen before, not even as a kid. Inside was a stone stairwell leading down, narrow and spiraling into the dark. I hesitated. You said the church was a mouth. This isn't a mouth, she said. This is the lung where it breathes you in. And then she did something I didn't expect. She handed me a photograph, a Polaroid, faded edges, curled with age. It showed the two of us, me and Rhea, standing in front of Darrington Elementary. We couldn't have been older than 6, but I didn't remember that picture being taken. I didn't remember us being close friends. In fact, I had almost no memory of her at all before a few weeks ago. She saw the confusion on my face. They're not just erasing places, she said. They're erasing connections, friendships, families, history. Anything that lets us stitch our identities together. She pointed to the photo. They missed this one, somehow, and that's why I'm still here. I looked at the picture again. I was smiling. She wasn't. She was looking at something off camera, something to the left, something out of frame. What's over there? I asked. She shook her head. You don't want to remember that part. We descended the stairs. The deeper we went, the warmer it got. Humid, sticky. The air grew thick with the smell of wet stone, and something organic, not quite rot. Not quite sweat, but something alive. The walls dripped with condensation. Occasionally, I thought I saw names scratched into the stone, but they blurred when I tried to focus on them. Then we reached the bottom. It was a cavern, a massive, hollow space that seemed impossibly large, like we'd passed into some interior world beneath the town. The walls curved in like ribs, slick and glistening. In the center was a stone pedestal with a small wooden box. Rhea stepped back. This is it, she whispered. I approached the box. It looked handmade, old. The hinges were rusted. The wood was cracked. Inside was a stack of letters, all sealed, each. One had a name on it, different handwriting, different styles, but each addressed to someone who, according to the return addresses, had lived in Darrington. Many of the names were ones I recognized from childhood. Teachers, classmates, store clerks. One simply said to the boy who hid in the corn. There were hundreds of them. I picked one at random and opened it. It was blank, just a piece of paper. No writing, no ink. But as I held it, something filled my ears. A voice, faint at first. Then, louder, familiar. Why did you let me drown? It was Dana's voice, clear as if she was standing beside me. I dropped the letter, picked up another dot again, blank. But this time, the voice was different. You promised not to tell. You said it was just a game. A cold pit opened in my gut. They weren't letters. They were memories, trapped, bottled, silenced, and the ones crossed out on the list. They weren't just gone. They'd been written away, replaced by silence, or worse, repurposed. Ria spoke from behind me. They feed on the memory of the town, but they can't fully consume it unless all ties are severed. That's what this is, a ritual, a forgetting, and you're the last thread. I turned toward her. Why me? Because you remembered. I looked back at the pedestal. There was one last letter buried beneath the others, larger, heavier. My name was on it, but it wasn't my handwriting. It was my mother's. I hadn't seen it in over 20 years, but I knew it. That looping, careful script, the way she always dotted her I's with a small, precise circle. I picked it up, hands trembling, dot inside. Just one sentence. I knew they'd come for you next. I dropped it. I couldn't breathe. The cave started to hum, a low thrumming sound, like distant thunder. The walls pulsed. Ria grabbed my arm. We need to go, now. But the list, forget the list. Forget the letters. If we stay, we'll become them. I turned to run, but the stairwell was gone. The hatch above us, sealed. Stone now. Seamless. Like it had never existed. We were inside it now, inside the memory, and something was waking up. The humming deepened. It wasn't just sound anymore. It was pressure, like being buried under wet earth. My teeth ached. My bones itched. Every breath tasted like copper and chalk. We were trapped. The stone had sealed itself behind us. No sign of the stairwell, no crack, no hint of where we'd come from. It was like the town was correcting itself, sealing off a leak. Like we were contaminants that had to be contained. I turned in a slow circle. The letters were gone. The pedestal empty. Even the paper I'd dropped my mother's had vanished into the damp ground, dissolved like sugar in rain. We need to move, Ria said, voice hoarse. Where? She didn't answer, because the walls had changed. They weren't just stone anymore. They pulsed softly, like they were breathing. And along their length, shapes began to push outward, human-sized bulges, arms stretching, fingers pressing against the slick, inner surface. They weren't breaking through. They were trapped inside the walls. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, frozen mid-scream, hands outstretched, mouths locked open in expressions of sheer panic. Their eyes rolled upward. Their hair floated, like they were drowning in memory. One of the faces was Mark Ellison. Another was Curtis. Another was Ria. I turned to her in horror. She was still there beside me, still breathing, still real. But her reflection, if that's what it was fused to the wall 10 feet away, eyes wide, hands beating soundlessly against the stone. I don't understand, I said. How can you be here and there? She didn't answer at first. Then softly, "Because I'm almost gone," her voice cracked. "I've been fighting it for years. I thought I had more time. But when you came back, you brought it with you. You stirred it awake." The floor shook just once. A long, slow exhale from somewhere deep beneath us. I grabbed her hand. "Then let's run." We moved fast, or tried to. The tunnel ahead was no longer straight. It twisted, corkscrewed, sometimes upward, sometimes sideways. The floor warped beneath our feet, like walking on a giant's tongue. The air grew hotter, thicker, every step like dragging ourselves through molasses. And the walls, the faces inside them began to move, not just push. They whispered, 1,000 different voices, overlapping, layered, some high-pitched like children, others ragged like dying lungs, all speaking at once. All saying the same thing: "We remember you. We remember you. We remember you." It felt like a curse, a binding spell. Each time they said it, the air pressed harder against my ribs. My vision blurred. The tunnel pulsed with light, not from any source, but from within the walls themselves. Like memories trying to burst free and reclaim form. Ria stumbled, fell. Her hand slipped from mine. I turned back. She was on her knees, gasping. "They're pulling me in," she choked. I knelt beside her, trying to lift her up, but her shadow wouldn't move. I don't mean metaphorically, I mean literally. Her shadow had stretched across the floor and pinned her there. Arms spread wide, fingers splayed, as if it were made of black tar. The walls whispered louder now. My name, over and over. "You are the last. You are the last. You are the last." And beneath that, something deeper. A voice that didn't belong to the trapped souls, or the town, or the mailman, or even memory itself. Something older. You looked back. You opened the envelope. You waved. You remembered. It was talking to me, something beneath Darrington. Something that fed on every recollection, every forgotten birthday, every erased face, every name that faded from school yearbooks and obituary columns. It had waited, and now it was hungry. I pulled harder, screaming Ria's name. She looked up at me, and I'll never forget her face, the resignation in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "You were never supposed to see this." Then she shoved me, hard. I fell backward, just as her shadow snapped shut, like a Venus flytrap, and she was gone. No scream, no flash, just gone. I crawled backward, heart slamming in my throat. The tunnel lit up with a single burst of orange-red light, like a flare beneath the earth, and then the walls shuddered, cracked, and split, and the thing came through. I can't describe it, not really. It wasn't a monster, not in the way you'd expect. It didn't have claws, or eyes, or limbs. It was absence, a hole in space, a perfect, yawning void, shaped like a person, but not bound by flesh or light. It pulsed with every name I'd ever forgotten, every childhood friend I never thought of again. Every moment that slipped out of reach, it stepped toward me. The whispers stopped. Even the walls fell silent, and in that silence, I heard something even worse. A small, familiar voice, my own as a child, saying, "I want to forget." The thing opened its arms, and the entire cavern began to collapse. It felt like drowning without water. The air peeled away. The light collapsed inward like a dying star. The world, the idea of the world, seemed to ripple and bend like heat waves off asphalt. My sense of time fractured completely. I didn't know if I was falling for seconds or centuries, but I knew one thing. Darrington was collapsing. Not physically, not entirely. It was collapsing as a memory. That thing, the figure, the absence, had stepped toward me, arms wide, dragging all forgotten things in its wake. Behind it came an unmaking. The tunnel split open, not into deeper earth, but into void, black static, noise, places I'd been that no longer existed. The inside of my childhood bedroom, a birthday party I barely recalled, my mother's laugh, all tearing themselves apart in the corners of my vision. And underneath it all, that voice. You remembered. You weren't supposed to. We asked you to stay gone. Now everything must be rewritten. I stumbled backwards through the collapsing cavern, chased by fragments of my own life. Ria's voice echoing like a radio caught between. Frequencies don't remember too fast. It draws them, another flash. I was standing outside the old elementary school, but the doors were gone. The walls were breathing. The swing set twisted into a noose. Flash again. The church bell tower, now upside down, spinning, melting. Flash. My mother's face, flickering like a bad TV signal, whispering, I knew they'd come for you. Then, darkness. I hit ground, hard, and silence returned. When I opened my eyes, I was back in town, but it was different now. Like I'd stepped into the concept of Darrington, not the place. The buildings were outlines, like sketches. The roads faded at the edges. Streetlights flickered without electricity. And above it all, the sky was blank. No stars, no clouds. Just a smooth, endless grey. I stood in the middle of what used to be the town square. The fountain was gone. The mailbox melted into the ground, but the faces were still watching me. Dozens of them, standing in a wide circle. Residents, friends, teachers, children, all the people who'd vanished, erased, forgotten. Their skin was pale, almost translucent. Their eyes were glazed, like fogged glass, but they weren't attacking me. They weren't even moving. They were waiting. And one of them stepped forward, the man in the yellow coat. But he wasn't smiling anymore. Not exactly. His face twitched at the corners, struggling to hold its familiar expression. His coat was darker now, wetter. His eyes burned with something ancient. Like he wasn't a man, not really, just a puppet made from memory, stretched thin over something hungrier. He raised his hand and pointed at me. You're the last, he said. His voice was a chorus. Not just his, but every voice I'd heard since I returned. Ria, Mark, my mother, my own. You opened to many letters. I tried to speak, but my mouth wouldn't open. My tongue felt glued to the roof of my mouth. You stirred the sediment, he continued. The pieces we buried, the faces we took, the sounds we folded into the dirt. He stepped closer. With every word, the town around me blurred. Houses, folded like paper, trees pixelated, roads cracked and disappeared. And then he said the thing I never expected. You can still leave, but you have to give something up. I shook my head. My muscles screamed. My lungs burned. What? I managed to choke out. He smiled, a real smile this time. Wide, too wide. Your memory, all of it. Everything tied to this place. Everyone you ever loved here. Everyone you tried to save. I didn't respond. We'll make you clean again, he said. You'll wake up in your bed. You'll think you grew up somewhere else. Your friends will have different names. Your childhood will be safe. And Ria, I asked. The others, they'll stay. He spread his arms. Darrington will remain buried, forgotten, where it belongs. The faces around me began to chant, soft and rhythmic. Forget, 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 forget. It grew louder. Forget, forget, forget. I closed my eyes. In that moment, I could feel the weight of every memory, every person lost, every day that vanished when the town was wiped from the maps, from the census, from the hearts of the people who once lived there. And I thought about Ria, her sacrifice, her warning. You're the tether. I opened my eyes. No, I said. The chanting stopped. The man's smile faded. You'll be buried with it, he said. If you won't forget, you'll stay. I know. I pulled the list from my pocket. Paper was damp, warped. The names had changed. Mark, Ellison, forgotten. Dana Wexler, erased. Curtis Dilley, overwritten. Ria Marin, watching my name. Remember Rinji. Held it up and I tore it in half. The sky shattered, not like glass, more like breaking water. Cracks of light exploded above us, and the figures screamed, not in pain, but like wounded animals retreating into the dark. The man in the yellow coat stumbled backward, shrieking in 100 voices at once. You were meant to forget. But I didn't. Not then, not now. And the town began to burn, not with fire, but with clarity. The buildings regained shape. The faces returned, not ghostly, not erased. Remembered, for the first time in decades, Darrington was visible, real, and then I blacked out. I woke up in my bed. Alarms were going off, birds chirping outside, morning sun through the blinds, my room, my apartment, like nothing had happened, but I knew, I remembered everything. I ran to my desk, opened my laptop, searched. Darrington, Pennsylvania. No results. I checked Google Maps. Nothing. County records, archives, census data. Still nothing. I checked my camera. All the photos were gone, except one, the class picture from Darrington Elementary. And there I was, standing in the second row, smiling awkwardly, missing a tooth next to me. Ria, her eyes locked on the camera, and behind her, just barely visible through the window in the background, was the man in the yellow coat, smiling, still watching. I didn't leave my apartment for 3 days. I barely ate, I barely slept. Not because I was scared the man in the yellow coat would show up, though that fear was always there, lurking just outside my peripheral vision, but because I was afraid that if I did fall asleep, I'd forget again, that I'd wake up and not remember Darrington, not remember Ria, not remember the choice I made in that collapsing place beneath the town. So I wrote pages and pages, everything I could recall, the names, the faces, the letters, the breathing church, the voices in the walls, the hole in the floor that wasn't a hole at all, the thing that offered me oblivion in exchange for silence. I filled 2 notebooks, and still I felt it slipping. Little details began to blur. The diner's name, the layout of the baseball field, whether the bell tower faced east or west, whether Ria had a scar on her eyebrow or her cheek. Memory is like a decaying photograph. The longer you stare, the more it fades. But then something strange happened. On the 4th night, just after midnight, I turned on the TV. I wasn't really watching. I just needed the sound, a distraction from the oppressive stillness in my apartment. I flipped through channels, infomercial, game show, static, static, more static, then suddenly a face, black and white, grainy, male. No discernible background, just grey haze behind him, and no sound at first. Then the audio clicked on a jarring pop, followed by a low hum. Then words. "This is an emergency broadcast." My body locked. The screen flickered. The man didn't blink, didn't move. He looked like a mannequin that someone had animated just enough to speak. If you are hearing this message, it means you remember a place that should not be remembered. My skin turned to ice. You may be experiencing dreams, visual distortions, auditory hallucinations, or the resurfacing of memories you do not recognize. Do not be alarmed. The screen flashed an image of a school hallway, locker doors half open, a trail of wet footprints, then back to the man. Your memory is under quarantine. The area formerly designated as D23B, colloquially referred to as Darrington, has been successfully neutralized. Exposure beyond this point is prohibited. Further remembering is a violation of consensus protocols. Another flash, a mailbox, red. A hand reaching into it, I stood up, backed away from the screen. To ensure your safety and the safety of the collective narrative, you are advised to report to the nearest memory disposal site. If you do not comply, containment measures will escalate. Then the screen cut to black dot, no channel, no input, nothing, dot. I grabbed the remote, tried to turn it back on every station, static, not the modern kind, not digital fuzz, the old kind, analog, snow, like the kind we saw on TVs in the 90s. I checked the cable, rebooted the box. Everything returned to normal. But that channel, that broadcast, gone. I checked the station number 837. It didn't exist. I googled emergency broadcast channel 837, double quotes, nothing, no results. But the words stayed with me. D23B. Quarantine, memory, disposal site. So I searched that. One result, a Reddit thread, posted 3 years ago. Title, "Weird letter in the mail after my grandma died." Anyone know what D23B means? The user deleted the post. Still there, they'd shared a photo of a letter, crumpled, a little torn. It said, "To whom it may concern. You are receiving this notice because you may have been exposed to destabilized memory vectors during the handling of estate items belonging to subject D23B. For your safety and the safety of others, please refrain from discussing any towns, schools, places of worship, or community figures associated with this designation. Sincerely, Narrative Containment Bureau Classification. For B, Folkloric Resonance, remember nothing, restore all. The comments were full of jokes, people calling it ARG bait. A few thought it was part of a creepypasta campaign, but one reply stood out, buried in the thread, only upvoted twice. Don't say the name out loud. It listens through names. D23B used to be real. I was born there. My sister disappeared there in '93. I think she's still there. I see her sometimes. In dreams, in mirrors. I think I brought her back. I think I made it remember. I clicked the profile, suspended .account, history scrubbed, no way to reach out. I sat there for hours, just staring at that thread, reading and rereading. The words Narrative Containment Bureau. What kind of institution polices memory? And why would they care about a town like Darrington? Unless... It was happening again. I shut off the TV, stared out the window below me in the alley behind the building. A figure stood by the dumpster, still. Too still, and even though they were over 5 stories down, I knew they were looking up at Me. Yellow coat. Not the same one. Different face this time. Shorter, narrower shoulders. No hat, but the coat was the same. As if it didn't belong to a person at all. As if it belonged to Darrington. The letter was already inside. When I awoke the next morning, it was sitting on the kitchen table. I live alone. I triple lock my door. The windows were shut. No sign of a break-in. But there it was, cream-colored envelope. No stamp, no postmark, no return address. Just one word handwritten on the front, in perfect black ink. Reminder. Not my name, not an address. Just that one word. I didn't open it right away. I just stared at it, afraid that even touching it would make something shift in me, in the apartment. In the reality I was still barely holding on to. Eventually, I picked it up. It was heavier than it looked. Inside was a single sheet of paper, thick like cardstock, not typed, handwritten, in the same smooth, looping script I'd seen on the list. The same handwriting that had addressed the letter from my mother. Dear Subject D23, Bianca, you are receiving this final notice because you have refused consensus amnesty. You were offered a clean severance. You chose retention. Your memory remains active. Your identity remains in conflict. You are now considered a containment breach. You have one final option. Return to the source. Complete the unthreading. If you do not comply by 3:17 a.m., the moment of original distortion, your memory, will become recursive, and containment will be impossible. Failure to comply will result in expansion. And if the memory spreads, we will not stop it again. Yours in silence. NCB, Office of Narrative Integrity. There was no signature, no name, just a stamped seal at the bottom. A circular emblem with an eye inside a labyrinth. Around the edge were the words caveat, cognitio. Let the one who remembers beware. I read it again, and with each read my memory sharpened, not dulled. I remembered more. The red bike I had as a kid. The way Ria used to braid her lanyard during class. The smell of the pencil sharpener in room 14. The mural in the gymnasium. The song we sang during the town's 197th anniversary parade. I remembered it all. And then I remembered something. I'd forgotten on purpose. My sister, her name was Emily. She vanished in Darrington the summer I turned 12. No body. No search party. Just gone. Everyone said I was an only child. Even my parents. Even my teachers. I believed them because they made me forget. And now I could see her, clear as day. Standing barefoot on the edge of White Hollow Creek. Smiling, waving, and then melting into the ground like a candle. They took her. She was the first, and I was meant to be the last. The letter trembled in my hand. Not from fear, it was actually vibrating. Like it was tuned to a frequency I couldn't hear, but could feel in my teeth. And when I turned it over, a second message had appeared on the back. We're not containing it anymore. You're remembering too fast. It's leaking. My phone buzzed. No number, just one word on the screen. Run. And then all the lights in my apartment shut off. Not flickered, off dot, total black. And I heard something in the hallway. Slow footsteps, wet peeling, dragging. I grabbed the envelope, the notebooks, the photo of me and Ria, and bolted out the back, down. 3 flights of stairs, across the alley, and that's when I saw them again. 4 figures, standing shoulder to shoulder at the far end of the street. All in yellow coats, no faces, just static where their heads should be. like the pixels had failed to load. They didn't chase me. They didn't move. They just watched, and every street lamp between me and them exploded, one by one, in perfect rhythm with my heartbeat. I didn't stop running until I reached the outskirts of the city, until the buildings gave way to trees, until I was alone with the wind that night. I slept in a rest stop bathroom off Route 32 at 3:16 a.m. I was wide awake, staring at my phone, watching the clock roll forward, waiting at 3:17. The mirror in the bathroom began to warp, not crack, not fog. It rippled like a surface of water, and someone stood behind my reflection. My sister, Emily. She was older now, my age, but it was her. She mouthed two words, "Come back." And then the door behind me opened, but no one was there, just air, thick with the scent of pine and wet paper. I knew where I had to go, the source, Dottington. What was left of it, what was waiting. I didn't drive there. I didn't need to. I just closed my eyes, and Darrington found me the next time I opened them. I was standing on the road that curved past Briar Lake, the one where the welcome sign used to sit, Darrington, founded 1841, where memory lives. Now there was no sign, no lake, just a 2-lane stretch of asphalt leading straight into fog. Not mist, not morning haze. Living fog, it clung to my skin like breath. It whispered names as it slid over my clothes. It remembered every scar, every lie I'd told, every toy I'd ever buried under my bed and forgotten about. It tasted like me, and I realized Darrington was never just a place. It was a reflex, a collective blink dot, a shared moment of forgetting that someone or something had learned to live inside. I stepped forward. The fog pulled away, forming a narrow path, and beneath my feet the cracked road began to change, from pavement to pages. Tens of thousands of handwritten letters, yellowed and curling, stitched together to form a path through the memory storm. Each one had a name, each one had been sent, each one had been ignored, and as I walked, I felt them whisper, "We were here. We waited. We were real. We remember you." Then I saw it, the church, not like before, not crumbling and old, not warped by time. This was the original church, newly painted, white walls gleaming under a black sky, stained glass windows full of saints whose eyes moved when you weren't looking, a single candle burning at the altar, and above the steeple, the rooster weather vane spun backward. The door opened on its own. No scream this time, just invitation. Stepped inside. The church was empty. No pews, no altar, just a single chair in the center of the room, lit by a shaft of blue light from a window that no longer existed. In the chair sat Emily, my sister, still barefoot, still 12, still wearing the red hoodie. She vanished in that summer by the creek. She looked up at me. Her eyes were filled with stars, not metaphorically. I mean actual constellations, twinkling like tiny holes in the night sky inside her pupils. "I tried to leave," she said softly, "but they remembered me too much." I stepped closer. "What is this place?" She tilted her head. "It's not a place. It's a reminder." She gestured to the space around us. The church began to shift, bend. The floor folded outward. The walls rippled like paper. The sky above turned into film reel, flickering through every face I'd ever seen, every corner of the town I'd explored, every moment I thought I'd forgotten. "It doesn't matter if no one knows the town," she said. "It exists because you do." because someone remembers. I felt something tighten in my chest, like rope, like roots. You came back, she said. I had to, she nodded. They'll try to take you, like they took me. I stepped forward, she stood. We were eye to eye. They live in forgetting. She said, they want silence. But you're loud now. Too loud. And from behind me, they arrived, not footsteps, not breathing, just shape. The yellow coats, 10, 20, 20, 50, all circling, some tall, some short, some human, some wrong, but all wearing the same expressionless smile, and behind them, one final figure, the man from the broadcast, the one who had told me to forget. His face shimmered like bad reception. His voice came before his mouth moved. You had your chance. We offered peace. I stepped in front of Emily. You offered erasure. The figure paused. Erasure is mercy. No, it's murder. The church shook. The walls cracked. The stars in Emily's eyes blazed, and I took out the photo, the one of me and Ria, the one that wasn't supposed to exist. I held it high, I remember, and I refused to forget. The sky ripped open. A sound like a billion pages flipping at once filled the air, and the yellow coats burned, not in fire, but in recognition, there. Forms peeled back, empty, paper-thin, hollow shells collapsing into nothing. The man with the broken face twisted, mouth opening in a scream that was cut off halfway, and then he was gone. They all were. The church went still, and Emily smiled. For the first time in years, she smiled without fear. You broke the loop. She said, I don't understand. She looked at the photograph. That's all it ever took. One piece they couldn't erase. Then the church began to fade. So did she. I reached for her. Wait, you're coming with me. But she was already. Dust, a warm wind blew past me, and in it I heard her voice, faint but clear. Remember me. I woke up at my desk, sunlight pouring through the window. The clock said 3:17. P.M. My inbox was full of unread emails. My calendar had 4 appointments I didn't recognize. The world had moved on, but I hadn't. I reached into my pocket. The photo was still there, still real, still proof, and on the back, just buried in silence. I checked the internet again. Still no town by that name. No record, no map, no map. But in a quiet corner of the web, I found a file, an old WAV file, .untitl, ed, 4 seconds of static, and then a voice, a child's voice, whispering, we're still here.